A longtime member of the Toronto Windsurfing Club to give a land acknowledgement.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted to say that we are grateful for the place that we have. It's exquisitely beautiful. And we respectfully acknowledge that Toronto is in the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. So thank you for allowing us to be here. We're grateful.
Thank you, Betty. I'm Jennifer. This is the Toronto Windsurfing Club. You passed the first test, you found us. And you made it past the marathon. We do have washrooms in the back. There is a key around and about. Here, another one, fluorescent-ish. There's coffee, treats over here. We have some great speakers today. People that know a lot about keeping us safe when we go out there and helping. They've come today to help us prepare to go out in this wild fall weather. We will be starting with Simon Rickard. Simon started windsurfing in 1993 when he was 9 years old. He started racing in Ontario and across Canada for 4 years. He started teaching windsurfing in 2002 and has helped created the kids camp for windsurfing in 2004. He is now the head instructor for adult lessons, and he also is our membership and storage coordinator for the club.
Hey guys.
I'm just gonna quickly
Go ahead.
introduce all of the speakers so you know who's coming up today, and then yes, Simon, thank you so much. Just one quick thing about cell phones. Please turn off your cell phones. It will be distracting if they should make a visit during our session here today. Our next speaker will be Paul Howard. Paul is the Outer Harbour Sailing Federation Commodore, and he's also the past Commodore for the TMCC. That's the Toronto Multi-Hull Cruising Club at the end of Regatta Road. Those big, beautiful catamarans. He's a former CYA certified instructor. He taught basic through advanced sailing and navigation, and was an instructor evaluator certifying sailing instructors. Paul sailed the trade winds route around the world, as well as high latitudes from the Arctic Circle to Cape Horn. He spent 15 years cruising full-time with his family around the world. He's also been cruising local in Outer Harbour and beyond, and has sailed in the area since the 1970s. Thank you, Paul, for coming today. We've got Detective Constable Stacy Kello, excuse me, pardon. She has 20 years with the Toronto Police Services and 14 with the Marine Unit. She's currently on the underwater search and rescue team, and she works alongside the intelligence officer and the RCMP, the US and the Canadian Coast Guards. She's recently been added to community officer position and previously worked 13 years for the rescue and response vessels on B platoon with the Marine. Thanks for coming, Susan. And we have Stephanie Todd in the red jacket. Stephanie has been windsurfing since the 80s and has a lot of experience with injuries windsurfing. She has a physical and health degree in fitness leisure management diploma, and she's a personal trainer and president of Surfit, a sport fitness training company. She has life-saving first aid and CPR defibrillator course conductor, and she's an examiner and has been since 1996. We also have Friends of Cherry Beach. Friends of Cherry Beach is a new group that formulated a couple of years ago, and it is brought together kiters, swimmers, windsurfers, wingers, sailors, rowers, dragon boaters, everybody that plays out here. And it's been a phenomenal group, and they will also be speaking today. We have Jessica and Jane, swimmers, in the back here, and they'll come say hi. We have kiters, Andrew, and Laura might be here as well. Do we have any rowers? Any rowers come today? Yay! Thank you. And paddlers. Yay! Anyone else? All right. Thank you. Thanks for coming today. We can't wait to get started. Simon.
Hey guys, how's it going? So today I'm going to go through a few different topics I think you guys have seen about. We're going to go through some apps, what to wear when it's cold, what to avoid for safety that's out there. I assume everyone here uses Outer Harbor mostly with what they're doing, and self-rescue. So for apps that I use, the main things I'm looking at for windsurfing, it probably applies to sailing and all that, is I want to know the forecast. Is the wind going to change on me? Is rain coming? Stuff like that. And then I've got two ways of checking after that. So I use the Windy app or igetwind.com. There's a model that's relatively new called the HRR model, High Resolution Rapid Refresh, I think it's called. I find that the most predictable for here. A lot of apps, if you look at them, they'll be like, oh, it's supposed to be windy. You show up and you see this.
What is that predictable app?
Windy, W-I-N-D-Y. It is the red icon one. So that one gives you the model for free. A lot of websites, when you go on them, you'll have to pay to get that model. So the Windy one I like because I can also, with that app, I can set alarms. So I have spots all over Ontario that I set for different parameters. Like if it's a northeast wind and it's 5 to 10 knots, or sorry, 10 to 15 knots, send me an alarm. So 2 days in advance, spots will ping and tell me where to look for wind. It's a free app, which is nice. So Windy, and it's a red icon. The other one, if you don't want an app, you can go on a website called igetwind.com, and then there you can find Cherry Beach, and it has the same thing. Along the top, it'll have all the different models, and you can find HRR there as well. So that model is really only good up to about 36 hours, and even then, like I can go to bed one night, it says it's gonna be windy, wake up in the morning, and the model's changed. So this year's been really unpredictable for weather for that type of stuff. Usually it's not that bad, but that's the best one I find. After that, so now I know my forecast of what the wind is supposed to do. So that's handy when I'm on the water. If I know it's supposed to shift offshore, I can, like when the wind starts dying, I start heading home because I know all of a sudden, in the next 20 minutes, it might take me an hour to get home rather than 10 minutes right now. Then I start looking at rain. So rain can do two things. It can either increase the wind or it can kill the wind generally. So, or it can change the direction. It can do that as well. So I want to know if rain that's coming, if I go on the weather network and it just says it's going to rain, there's lots of different types of rain. There is little spitting rain, or there is thunderstorms. And the problem you'll have is it'll say, like if you look at Toronto, it'll say there's going to be thunderstorms all day. So remember that day where like the trees got knocked down? I think it was in July, like that crazy, crazy storm. It was 5 minutes of chaos, and that was it here. You could see the wall of rain coming, and then it went right past us, and the rest of the day was okay. So I like to look at the actual radar to see where that rain is hitting, because often it's going to be north of Bloor Street. It won't hit here. Like all year, I canceled one lesson for rain. I think I canceled two, but one of them I didn't have to. So here is a pretty good spot for dodging rain. Any questions on apps there? Okay. Oh, and then one other thing. So I have another app. You can also use the websites as well for the Toronto Island Airport. So that's pretty handy for getting live updates of current weather. So say the forecast says at 2 p.m. it's supposed to pick up. I will be constantly checking the island airport, and that'll hopefully give me a heads up that it's about to hit. So unless I see it coming, I can always check there and be like, oh, the wind's already hitting on the west side of the island. It'll probably be here in 15 minutes, kind of stuff like that. Or if I'm, the webcam's down, we have a webcam that you can use to check to see what you can see out there. The island airport is another way of checking what the actual wind is doing. If no one is on the water, the webcam is not the easiest thing to figure out how much wind there is. The difference between 7 knots and 14 knots is very hard to pick apart. For clothes, so for cold weather, it depends on what sport you're doing, I guess, because you'll want different attire for every sport. But for windsurfing, I recommend 4-3 wetsuits. Because they're tight, they're going to trap the water and keep you warm. So there's 4-3 or 5-4, and that means the thickness. So in the chest it's 5, and in the arms it's 4. Or you can go with a dry suit. The downsides you have with a dry suit is if they tear, they are quite detrimental. So With windsurfing, some of the newer ones have like a canvas fabric over top, so they're a bit more resilient. But any of those things will keep you warm. You want to make sure you're nice and warm. The second you get cold, you get tired. Once you get tired, you probably get into stress, and then things spiral out of control. So 5-4 wetsuits and 4-3 wetsuits are what I'm currently using. Some people have dry suits, they're fine as well right now. A thing that'll also help for windsurfing is the accessories. So right now the water is warm, so if I put on my 4-3 wetsuit and I go for a swim, I'd be fine. I probably wouldn't need much else. But once we're out of the water, especially when it's windy, that wind chill effect you get across your body is really, really chill. So for windsurfing specifically, we have mitts that have the holes cut open in them. And so the reason we have that is we get a lot of power from flexing our forearm to grab on the boom. The wider that grip gets, the more fatigue we get. So we have a tight wetsuit on there strapping down our circulation. And if we have thick gloves, we're gonna go out there and in 10 minutes our forearms will be really, really tired. So open palm gloves are one of the best ways. They're still cold when you fall in the water, but the second you're out, there's no wind chill going across your hands, and it makes a big, big difference. You still might have to, if you're out there in November, December, come back in, heat up, and then go back out every once in a while, but they make a world of difference. And then a hoodie is really helpful, or a beanie, just something to cover the skin. Something over your head, a helmet will work too, just something to cut out that wind chill. Oh, and if you get really cold, one of the common problems that I've seen people do in the past is go take some warm water and then generally hot water and then like shove their cold parts in there, like their feet or their hands, and you don't want to do that. So if your hands and feet get really cold, it's better just use your own body heat to kind of get them up nice and slow. Otherwise, there's more likely that you'll damage your hands, the tissue in your hands. Because you're just freezing cold, put them into boiling water, not boiling, but really hot water, and it'll cause basically nerve damage and tissue damage. Okay, so for hazards in the bay, so the general easy ones to pick out would be rocks. So everyone knows over there by Outer Harbor, there's the giant wall of rocks. So that one's a nice easy one. You can see the rocks. They have rebar in them, so there's pieces of metal pipe kind of crooked sticking out of it. So that adds a little danger in there, but it's a pretty easy visual. Harder spots is straight across over here, there's a sunken barge. So it is the sister ferry, or the brother ferry of that one. It was made at the same time as the original ferry that we have in Toronto downtown, and it had a terrible life, and in like 10 years or less than that, it was a barge stuck over there. So underneath the tip of there, it kind of extends out, so it's a very shallow area. So if you look to the straight out, you'll see that little island. To the right side of that is a metal barge that sticks out from under the water. Also in that area, because the water level is down a lot this year, the whole island under the water is fairly shallow. So we had a big windsurfing race about a month ago, and we have foils nowadays, and our foils were touching down. So you have to be careful of what depth you're sailing in. Also in the bay in the far side past that water is relatively shallow. So if you have big swell, when the swell goes down, that water can get down to about maybe 3 or 4 feet. Again, problems for foils. The other spots I would say that have rocks is basically along this shoreline right here. It kicks out before we get to the public beach, and under there's a lot of bad rocks. So generally when I'm teaching my students, I keep them away from there, I keep them away from the rocks over there, and I keep them away from the barge over there. On top of that, on the far side is the boating channel. So this is roughly where we've designated all powerboats to go. So the thing I would say is just like when you cross the road, look both ways. So if you're going in anywhere near that area, it's like our own safety to keep our eyes open to see what other people are doing. Not every driver in the world has the same skill set. Not everyone's watching, so it's best to watch out for yourself. The hard part we generally have is we are going this way while the boats are going this way. So sometimes you have to look behind you or just keep just a general awareness of boats coming in and out. It makes a big difference. And then one last thing is current. So depending on the wind we have that day, can cause current to happen in different spots. So yesterday we had a southwest wind that's pushing water here. So along the shoreline, we had current funneling along the shoreline here and then going into the bay over there. So my beginner students would get out, start to struggle, and then they would drift to what I basically have designated dead man's turn. So they go around the corner over here, and then the only way they can get home is they either need to get back to shore and walk, or they need a rescue from one of our boats, or they drift very, very far and somehow get themselves home, which is not the easiest way. So anywhere there is a mouth, so over here between Water Rats and Outer Harbor, between Outer Harbor and the Spit, and then straight across over there for the Toronto Mooring Sail Club. I can't remember what it's called.
Toronto Monty-Wood? Oh,
Yeah.
the aquatic park. in the boat
Aquatic,
racing.
yeah.
Aquatic park.
So whenever there's a wind blowing the same direction, if you're in front of these mouths, you'll have a lot of current. So if you are struggling that day, be aware of where places will be where the current will speed up. Okay? So those are the 3 spots I always think about. Oh, okay. So for calling for help. So we had this actually happen this year. And so I hope everyone has a whistle attached to their life vest or on them at all times. So it's really handy to have something like this because you never know when you will need to blow it. So the big thing I would say is long blasts are the big thing you want to remember. If you're doing a short whistle, all the time I hear when we're teaching lessons, we'll do things called turning on the whistle. Short blasts can have a lot of meanings. So long blasts are the ones that people will notice. So that's 4 to 6 seconds is a long blast. And so if you want the actual international one, it is 3 long blasts, followed by 3 short blasts, followed by 3 long blasts. Okay, so that's SOS. But if you just do long blasts, you will get help. It is not often we hear those, so someone will definitely come over and try to inspect you. And then once you've got someone over there, they can hopefully call for help. Either they themselves can have a radio or a cell phone, communicate with someone to get help, or they can go get somebody on shore to go get someone to get help. Okay. I also recommend with people when they go out, sometimes a cell phone's handy. You can have any type of mechanical failure, and if no one notices you, like say you don't have your whistle, although you shouldn't have that. If people just don't notice you, if it's a really windy day, they're all distracted with their own thing. The nice thing about having a cell phone is you can call someone and tell them to come and get you some help, or you can just call 911 and they will find you. Okay. International sound. So if you're struggling, waving above your head, it's not that hard. This will generally get people to come over. Yeah?
Just very quickly, there was an incident a few weeks ago where somebody was out on the water and they went to reach for their whistle and their cord was too short.
Yeah.
So make sure that where you can actually
reach your mouth.
Reach your mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not something you want to fidget with in the moment. So just waving your hands will get you some help if you put it above your head. If you're in the water or if you're on your windsurfer, generally people will notice that. But the whistle is the best because that'll get someone who's not looking at you to notice you and get them to come over. And then the last thing is, thumbs up. So if I'm asking for, if I see someone that they may not think they're struggling or they're still trying to figure it out, I'll go up and just go like this with them. This is like my international symbol of like, are you okay? And you just respond with a thumbs up back. So if you're ever going up to someone you're not sure and you can't hear them, thumbs up is a great way to ask if they're okay. And then self-rescue. So this is for getting your cell phone. So this is again windsurfing specific. So I have 3 types. There is the light wind, so a day like today where there's no waves, no current, and no wind. So with windsurfing, you want to place the sail on the tail of the board. That way the whole sail's out of the water. You lay down on the front and can paddle it like a paddleboard. The big thing you have to be aware of is that your boom is resting on the tail. So sometimes you might have to lower the boom so that it rests on the tail, because if it's too long, the sail will rest in the water and that'll cause drag. So this is like your light wind rescue, like you're out there, it's gonna take you 45 minutes to an hour to come home, and if you sit or if you paddle, maybe it'll take you 50 just to get you home, get you back on land. I have a high wind rescue. So the high wind rescue is a bit more elaborate. You have because you have to take apart all your gear in the water. So you have to detach your sail and start de-rigging your gear on the water, which can be very physical because if you're in waves and stuff like that, it's turning you about, and it can be expensive because you can easily lose pieces. Not every piece of windsurfing gear floats, like your extension doesn't float, stuff like that. So as I'm taking them off, I'm attaching them to the board, and then that way, hopefully, I don't lose them. So I take it all apart, roll up the sail, place it on top, and then I lay on top of the whole kit, and then I can paddle home. So if it's on a wavy day, and I'm stuck on the far side, I might go over there towards land, take apart all my gear, or if I'm in the middle of the water and I feel like I can still get home and there's nothing, no imminent danger coming, I can take it all apart, paddle home. The last one is my emergency saver. So this is if, say, I'm out there, and if I didn't have the spit is a nice spot for us to be able to like hide out when stuff gets really crazy. But I see some crazy weather coming, so usually my worst snare is like a shelf cloud. It's a big wall, and then all of a sudden it goes from this to like chaos. So if I see that coming and I can't windsurf home effectively or quick, I would detach my sail, leave it, and then just paddle my board home. And that's the fastest way to get home. And I'll have no drag, so if I have a fair amount of wind, I'll probably make some good speed against it. So that's my last resort. I haven't had to do that one yet, but you never know. Do you guys have any questions about anything I went through there? I went a little quick, but tried to be thorough. Yeah?
First, Simon, SOS is 3 short.
3 long, 3 short, 3 long.
No, the other way.
Morse
Really?
code. It's the Morse code SOS.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think, yeah. So, or it's specific to marine navigation.
Where I looked, I thought it was the marine one I looked up, but I think it's 3 long, isn't it?
It's 3 long, 3 short, 3 long. It's
Yeah.
Morse code. Morse code
Yeah.
for S and O and S.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll double check.
Yeah.
Could you explain the wetsuit ratios, those numbers, 4, 3 by 4, what do they mean?
So they're the thickness. So the bigger
Thickness
number
of
is the
each
thickness in the
part.
core, and then the other parts would be the extremities. So 4.3, 3.2 would be 4 millimeters, 3 millimeters, or 5 millimeters, 4 millimeters.
Right, and for windsurfing specific application, is there like a temperature that we look at?
No,
7 degrees
it depends on the
okay,
person's body temperature. So I have a pretty high core temperature. I get warm very easy. So I could probably go out in less layers than somebody who has a low body temperature core. So if I have a small, very thin woman, they're probably gonna have a lower core temperature. So I would recommend extra thick wetsuit. Whereas if I have an overweight big guy, I would recommend a nice 3.2 or 4.3. And the important thing about a wetsuit is that it's really tight. It's going to be somewhat uncomfortable. If the water can get in and out through the cuffs and stuff like that, you will get really cold because the water temperature can change. It's a sponge. It's meant to hold and trap the water, and then that is supposed to heat up and keep it warm.
Simon, and then
Yep.
types of wetsuits, because for surfers, wetsuits are different than for windsurfers, right?
Mhm. Yeah. So sometimes, so surfing one I wouldn't say is much different, because they'll have the knee pads and stuff like that. Whereas if you go to scuba, they may not have knee pads. So generally, I would say the differences are where we have abrasion, so where there'll be wear and tear. Windsurfing and surfing will generally have more, not defensive, but like more strong materials in the spots where we would wear and tear them. So in the elbows, stuff like that.
But the idea is the same. because the
Yep, yeah,
word
I could buy a surfer's wetsuit and say okay. Yeah, a scuba one I would not recommend. They may not have shoulder mobility, and I don't think they have knee pads.
Scuba ones are super stiff too, and they can break. So if you move too much, they'll tear, and the water will go in and out.
Yeah. They also have nowadays, they have chest zips versus back zips, which are the traditional. The chest zips are a little warmer. They make a better seal around the neck, but they are harder to get in and out of.
What's your advice on the first thing to do if it's really cold when you get back with yourself?
So I would make sure I got everything out of the water so I don't have to get wet again, and instantly I would get changed into some warm, dry clothes. So track pants, a sweater, a windbreaker on top of that. If I'm going back on the water, so if I'm wet in a wetsuit and I come off and I just want to like hang out for maybe half an hour while I kind of like get my energy back before I'm going, then I would put windbreakers on. So just something to kind of trap the air over the wetsuit so that I don't get cold. Yep.
I just want to add, for this specific location, for the beginners, avoid going out when it's a north wind.
Yeah.
Especially on the shore. Just forget about, oh nice, 20 knots, I'm going, I have a bad experience, end up with my son on the other shore, in the middle of the night,
Oh, no.
in the rest of the other club, so just avoid going, forget about it.
Yeah.
You will have more wind coming.
Yeah.
Forwarding, north wind,
Yeah, so forecasts are really good for that because my biggest fear is I'll teach someone a beginner course and we'll have easy weather the whole time, and they never get to see what a north wind looks like, and they're very, very misleading. You can look out on the water and it looks pretty calm, but as you get further from the shore, the wind increases, and since the waves go away from you, you don't really see them. So it's a very easy wind where you start going, you're like, oh, this isn't too bad. You go a little further, you're like, oh, okay, this is pretty good, and then half an hour later, like, okay, let's go home, and that doesn't happen at all. So north winds, offshore winds in general are pretty tough. And especially here because we have the city, it makes the wind very volatile in power and in direction. So it's really unstable. So it's not, if it's really windy here and it's 20 knots offshore, you'll see 10 windsurfers at most. Like even the veterans choose not to sail in this if we have better options to go to.
I would highly recommend too, before you go out on the water, so before you go out on the water, always make sure that somebody knows that you're going out there. Whether you come down to the beach by yourself, somebody at home knows where you are and what time to expect you back, and somebody here, and to me, I don't windsurf unless there's a buddy. And it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody I know, because I sail out of Keswick, because I'm up north. And we've got a group there too, and so everybody keeps an eye out for everybody else. So if you've finished windsurfing and you're not in a rush to get home, or you are in a rush to get home, you tell somebody else out on the water who your other buddy was or who you saw last. You know, so you can say, well, Alex, I saw him headed way up there a while back, and he's commonly gets stuck. And he's a good sailor, but he somehow, you know, parts break, whatever. So it's really important that you always have somebody keeping an eye on you. So when I'm out windsurfing, I'm always looking at other people to see where they are and to make sure that they're okay. Because that's what windsurfing is, we're a family. We want to take care of each other.
Amazing. Thank you, Simon. And Simon is one of the heroes of Outer Harbor, just so you know. He's not out just rescuing windsurfers. He's often out there rescuing kiters, sailors, everyone that plays out here. So incredibly grateful, Simon. Thank you.
If you have a dry suit, what do you recommend wearing with it?
So I would just, like, the way I would think about it is if I was going skiing. So thin, warm layers is what I'd recommend, tight stuff. But some people I've seen a guy come out of it in a tux. Like, he's in a business suit. But I wouldn't recommend that for mobility. I would generally wear the same type of undergarment that I would wear skiing, like long tight leggings, long sleeve shirts, stuff like that.
Jennifer, do we have one question?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
So could you run a quick scenario of us crossing to the other end? You say watch out for those big boats, but sometimes they don't. So what to do if you, like, the worst case scenario, you want to cross.
So as I start from here, I start watching.
So what is the distance we need to watch, the speed?
You never know. So I would just say that you're just, as I'm like the second I leave shore, I'm looking at my perimeters, as I'm going, hopefully by the time someone is in my blind spot, I'm going hopefully fast enough. Otherwise I just slow down, like I can sheet out,
That's
get more balance,
like
and
so
turn.
we don't shout, we don't wave hands at them, we don't show fingers, we don't flip them.
No.
We don't. What do we do? You see he doesn't pay attention, how do we know he doesn't pay attention? He doesn't change the course, he doesn't...
So it depends on what your eyesight is. I would look at their concentration. Like, do they make eye contact with you? Like, if I'm looking at a person driving a car and I'm riding, like I'm doing something where I'm going to cross their path, I try to make eye contact and then get a feel.
Seek out the driver.
Yeah, but I would always dodge them rather than test. Like, if I don't get confirmation, I'd stop, turn around, go the other way. Like, I'd give 0% chance where I rely on them to make a maneuver versus me.
Do you whistle?
If I had to, yeah, I probably not. I'd probably turn instead.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Jerry?
think what Sergey is saying as well is talking about right of way. And I think you have to assume most people on windsurfers, I would hope, understand the right of way rules. And most people in sailboats certainly understand the right of way rules. But if you assume that they understand the right of way rules, that's when you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
So the first rule of right of way is avoid at all costs.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the bottom line. If you're zipping along and there's another boat coming and you're on starboard and they're on port, you can't assume that they know the rules. You better just slow down or stop and turn around.
Yeah. I know with
Don't take a
windsurfers,
chance.
I'll make an early turn very early just to commit to a direction. Because the worst thing is where you get too close and then you both react at the same time.
Yeah.
So windsurfing, that would be because they're really high speed. Whereas sailboats, I don't have that problem. Powerboats, we're not going the same direction very often. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Paul Howard.
Just one other quick comment on the right-of-way rules. Always remember that the navigation channel, the marked channel going up to the Eastern Gap, large commercial ships have right-of-way over windsurfer, canoers, paddleboarders, etc., because they cannot leave the channel. So if you're in that navigation channel and a big ship's coming along and he starts going, "Bloop, bloop, bloop," he wants you to get out of the way because he can't stop. So that's one other thing.
Sorry, could you point that channel in the map? We see that we're talking about
Eastern Western
Here.
Gap.
It comes up through here, comes up past, there's a red and a green marker here, there's the red marker here, the T4, green marker, T8, red marker here, and then it turns and goes in the Eastern Gap. So any commercial ship has right-of-way here over every other vessel. Thank you. Otherwise, all these motorboaters have to give way.
Could you define what you consider a big boat?
Usually it's any commercial vessel, and that can include the large charter boats, that, you know, the big schooners and so forth, and large, but any commercial vessel that would be licensed and has a deep draft is restricted to that channel, and he has right of way in that channel.
But let's say the ones that come here and anchor for the party.
No.
Okay.
Well, you're probably going to address this safety as well.
You're right.
I
They're
shouldn't get
restricted
too-
in their mobility, like it's obvious, but yeah, no. I know that there's a problem.
Yeah, and
The way I
sometimes those
look at it,
commercial.
I'm small, they're big,
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay away.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Well,
can.
if he starts doing the several, 4 or more long blasts on his horn, it means get out of the way, I can't stop. That's essentially the message. Okay, so I'm going to talk mostly about wind, a bit about waves and so forth, and the unique features we have around the outer harbor here. But always remember that the forecast is at best about 75% accurate. So if it says the wind is going to shift from the southwest to the northwest at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it may or may not. It might be 5 o'clock before it shifts. It might shift at 2 o'clock. I mean, you know, you always have to give yourself some kind of leeway, as we sailors say. You can't depend on the weather. It's not on a time clock. It's not a train schedule. And because we're doing a lot of later in the season sailing, especially the windsurfers and kiteboarders and so forth like to go out, there's a huge difference in sailing in July from sailing, say, in December. And I've got a few statistics here. The dominant wind year-round here is westerly. West is roughly over there. Southwest is a little more often in the summer, about 45% of the time in the summer. It goes a little bit west to northwest, about 50% of the time in December. So we've got a definite difference between July and December in the direction of the wind. About 20% of the time, the wind is from the north, coming over here. But there's also a lot of other things to consider. For instance, in July, the mean wind speed is 15 kilometers an hour, roughly 8 knots. The maximum gust are about 48 kilometers an hour. This was recorded in 2022. This is statistics for this past July. The maximum gust was 73 kilometers an hour, and that was from 230 degrees southwest, virtually right there, from that maximum gust. In December 2021, the mean sustained wind was 17 kilometers an hour, 2 kilometers more. But the maximum wind speed was 67 kilometers an hour, and the maximum gust was 124 kilometers an hour. And that was from 260 degrees, almost due west, right? So you have, in December, the mean wind is only a couple kilometers an hour stronger, but the gusts average 20 kilometers stronger, and the maximum gust was 50 kilometers stronger in December than in July. So there's a huge difference in that. And Also, you should consider that the temperature makes a huge difference in how the wind feels. In December of 2021, well, in July, of course, we get, temperatures up into 30 degrees. In December 2021, there were 3 days with the summer, with the maximum temperature of below 0. So there were only 3 days when it was actually freezing in December of last year, and there were about 14 days of December where it froze overnight. So there might or might not be a little bit of ice out in December. Usually it's January when it really. But if you consider that the air, and therefore the wind, is a gas, right? Expands and contracts. In the wintertime, in December, the same forecasted wind is 10% stronger than it is in July. So 30 degrees in July, nice light wind. In December, when it's colder and the air is drier, it's 10% stronger for the same forecast wind. So always remember, cold, dry air is heavier and the wind will feel stronger on your sails in December rather than in July. So also the wind, as Simon said, it changes a lot according to the shoreline effects, and that is really dependent on the direction of the wind as to what it strikes first. So our dominant wind, 225 degrees southwest, blows right straight in. And the wind will blow the most consistently over a flat surface. So when the wind is blowing straight in here, when it's away from the shore and so forth, it will be fairly consistent, doesn't shift and change. If you're out by the headland over there, as the wind wraps around the point, it's going to change. So if you see my little outer harbor here, so if the wind is coming from here and it hits this point, it's going to wrap here. And it's going to go along here more, and it'll be blowing straight in here. And when it strikes this shore, this is Ward's Island Beach and this is Cherry Beach here, it's going to come along and then it's going to accelerate and go more that way. So there's going to be a constant change in the wind depending on where it's coming from. And of course, as I said, we get about 20% of the time we get wind out of the north. This is sort of a northeast-southwest shoreline here. So if the wind's coming out of the north, and we have some trees here, and then we have flat water, and then we have the trees on the other side there. So the wind is going to come over the trees, it's going to come down as a downdraft, it's going to blow along here, and then it's going to lift up over the trees there. So close to the beach, the wind is coming over the trees and it's coming down. So it's going to feel a lot different on your sail. As the wind comes down, it strikes the water, flattens out, and goes across, and then it lifts over there. And when you're out there sailing, you'll often see the cat's paws, the darker water where the wind is ruffled and so forth. It's more consistent out in the middle than it is near the shore. So as you approach the shore, you're going to have updrafts and downdrafts. More important maybe for kite boarders because their kite's got to stay up in the air. But always remember wind shadows, not just the wind shadow of the trees on the windward shore, say in this case the north shore, but also on the south shore. On the south, when the wind's coming from the southwest, you're going to have a wind shadow behind those trees. It's going to be blowing over here, and then it's going to lift up over the trees here, so it'll drop off as you approach the beach. But also remember the temperature change. Beach, on a sunny day, the beach warms up, and it brings the draft up. There's a rising current of air. We also have this huge paved area up here. On a hot day, heats up, air rises. So that cooler air coming off the lake is going to be sucked towards the shore. It's going to deviate a bit because it wants to go 90 degrees to the shore because it's going up in the air. So always think about the shore effects. One of the more dangerous parts of the outer harbor, especially in a north wind, when the wind is at all north of west, or the eastern gap, right? This eastern gap is in a northwesterly direction. If the wind is coming from this way, even though you would think would be blowing across there, it doesn't. It comes off the outer harbor and it blasts out here and it goes like that. So the wind, as it comes through here, because the Venturi effect, because it's coming through a narrow space, can accelerate up to 50% stronger. So if you're out here near the eastern gap, the wind is north of west, expect it to bend and blast out through there. So on a gusty day, wind from the northwest or north, stay away from the eastern gap. Simple. Or if you're crossing over to Ward's Island, say the Ward's Island beach, over here, expect as you cross here, you're going to get a blast of wind. It's not going to last very long. A gust typically lasts less than 20 seconds. It might be 10 seconds, it might be 20 seconds, but typically a gust of wind doesn't last more than 20 seconds. Also, and Simon mentioned this a bit, we have about 370 meters width here at the easternmost end of the outer harbor. It's roughly, even though it doesn't look, not to scale drawing here, it's about the same here, 370 meters width from the rat spit to the headland, you can't quite see it, of the outer harbor marina there. Here we've got 1.3 kilometers of distance between the Leslie Street spit and Cherry Beach. So the wind that's coming in here is going to want to funnel through here, another acceleration point. In the cold weather, this wind is going to funnel through here, and it can be about 30% stronger as it comes through here than it is, say, out in the middle, out here. So always expect stronger wind as you get further in the eastern part of the harbor. Another thing, as Simon also mentioned, concrete riprap. You know, once you go through here, you essentially have no soft landing. There's a little bit of a rocky beach here by the cooling channel, way in the very northeast corner, that you could land without getting beat up. But if you get blown ashore, anywhere around here, it's all concrete rubble and rebar and old pipes and all kinds of stuff. So on a windy, gusty day with a westerly wind, try not to go through here. You've got a nice sandy area here. Try to land on the sandy area, and you might have to walk back around or carry your stuff around, but don't allow yourself to be blown in here, because the wind is going to be stronger here than it is back here, and also the shore is really rough. I've dragged many a boat, many a windsurfer and so forth, kiteboarders, off the rocks over there in that eastern portion. And because once you have a strong west to northwest wind especially, there's no getting out of there. Windsurfers and kiteboarders have a really hard time getting out of there. So clouds also make a big difference. And again, this might be more relevant to the kiteboarders than windsurfers. But as the clouds come over, if we have, you know, a big cloud here and then a gap, you know, on those nice, brisk, sunny days, we've got the water down here. Each cloud has its own little wind system. So the clouds, usually they come from the west going east. There's a little line here. And make sure I get this right. We have a downdraft. We have an updraft, and then the wind blows sort of horizontal to the surface until we get to the next cloud with the downdraft and an updraft, and then the wind flattens out again. So on those blustery, cloudy days when those big clouds are sailing overhead, expect downdrafts, and as the wind changes to a downdraft, it accelerates. So you're going to have a puff, a gust, 20–30% stronger as that cloud comes over. Then there's going to be a reciprocal updraft, and then it's going to start flattening out and going this way again. Cloudy day, look at the sky, don't just look at the water. I mean, you got a lot of things to look at, I know, but consider the updrafts, downdrafts, where the wind is paralleling the surface of the water, where it's straight, where it's being bent by the trees, shoreline effects, and so forth. It can make a big difference, especially, as say, for the kite boarders. You know, we had a kite boarder who was lifted up in a big gust, fell and died because he hit a big updraft, took him way up in the air, then in the lull, he fell. He didn't drown, he died from the impact of the water.
That was here?
That was here, just right here.
Jason.
Okay. So if any of you were around here yesterday at about 10:30, you'd have seen a big squall line, a dark line of clouds. There was low cloud like this, and then there was a line, a dark. If you watched it enough, you'd see it. You would have seen it rolling along a bit. Perfect classical example of a line squall coming through. This was yesterday. I saw it first. I was over here working on my boat. I first noticed it about 10 o'clock in the morning. The wind, at 9 o'clock, the temperature was 14 degrees. The wind was about 24 kilometers an hour from the south. At 10 o'clock, the temperature had fallen to from 14 degrees to 10 degrees. So in 1 hour, the temperature dropped 4 degrees. The wind switched to the west, 31 kilometers an hour. And as that squall passed, the wind went to 43 kilometers an hour. And then we had pelting rain for about 15 minutes or so. And then it stopped. The rain passed, the squall line passed. You could see that well-defined cloud moving from the west to the east. And then it cleared up, as it usually does. The wind went more west, more towards sort of northwestish, a bit north of west, changed around, sunny, sun came out, big rolling clouds. Each cloud had its own wind pattern, and the wind shifted as each cloud came past. Perfect classic example of a cold front coming through. So another little bit about self-rescue. Obviously you have the Cherry Beach right here. And we know, thinking about the self-rescue, the wind shadow, the surface, the wind lifts off the surface as it encounters trees, any high thing. It could be a bluff or something if you're somewhere else. We have soft sand here. We have soft sand on the rat spit. We have some mud banks directly across the way over there. everything to the east is concrete rubble, except that one little rocky beach over here by the cooling channel from the old Hearn generating station. So always think about a soft landing. So if you're coming out, and I don't want to scare people from going out on the water. I think, you know, we have this beautiful bit of water. It's a great resource. I love being out here. I've been a member at the TMCC for 23 years. I've been sailing around here forever. But always consider your ability to the maximum apparent wind. So if you're sailing downwind, you have very little apparent wind because you're moving with the wind. Your speed is decreasing the wind that you feel. So if the wind is at, say, 20 kilometers an hour, you're doing, 15 kilometers an hour, you can decrease that so the wind you actually feel is very little. If you turn and head upwind, that apparent wind is going to increase by your speed and the angle that you have into the wind. So a 20 kilometer an hour wind might feel like 30 kilometers an hour. So don't just go out and go downwind and then suddenly want to change and come back and realize, wow, this is really strong. Try to always, when you first go out, head into the wind and see what the wind feels like going into the wind. Don't just go downwind and say, oh, this is a nice day today. And then you get down to the east end of the harbor and you can't get back again because of the acceleration of the wind and pinching in here, and it's going to be all directly upwind. There's no angle that you can get very safely. So always consider the stronger apparent wind, not just the maximum forecast wind. Also, the stronger the wind, adjust your sails accordingly. When the wind is really light, like it is today, you can have that sail quite soft, quite a large bow, might be hitting your wishbone boom on the side. The stronger the wind, the flatter the sail. Flattening your sail depowers the sail. So stretch that out haul, stretch the down haul, so you have a flat board of the sail on a strong wind, gusty day. That depowers the sail, so it'll be easier to hold up. And also when you tack, the sail's not going to flap and flutter. It's going to be held solid, like a solid board. So you can, as you go along, you get a gust of wind, you can release your sail, let it out a bit, let it feather into the wind, bring it back in, so you're operating more on a deflection of wind rather than on the draft of the sail, the airplane wing type deflection of wind. You're doing just a forward direction deflection of wind. So try to always do that. Another tip, when you're going directly downwind, if you're out on one of these really big gusty days, every gust can be about 30 degrees difference from the sustained wind. And typically it rotates clockwise, but not always. So if you're going dead downwind and you get a big gust of wind, it might cause an accidental jibe that's going to knock you over. If you do a broad reach and reach across and then reach back, so that you're doing essentially tacking downwind. If the wind is coming here, you're going to go this way, then you're going to go that way, and then you're going to go that way. So the wind is not dead behind you. And it will make your sailing more reliable. You're less likely to get dumped off by a gust. I'm almost done. Actually, I'll call that good enough. Any questions? I've covered a lot of stuff here. But
It's fascinating.
comments?
It's amazing.
I think I will try golf.
No, don't be frightened. I sailed about 130,000 ocean miles. I've sailed in hurricane force winds. If you understand and know how to make your boat, your vessel, or whatever it is, windsurfer, sailboat, whatever it is, manageable, you can survive those conditions and you can enjoy it. You know, it's not. I don't want to frighten people and say don't go out on a gusty day. Go out on a gusty day, but just be aware of all these different factors and how the cloud and the shoreline effects are likely to affect you. Stay out here in the middle, go back and forth, whatever, have a nice time. You'll see, you know, those nice crisp fall days, they're great. They really are.
Can you get a vortex back? So you got trees on the shore, winds coming along, and I've had it where I get backwinded as I approach the shore.
Right.
Do you get a vortex come around?
You can, yeah, surface of the water, tree, the wind will lift, and sometimes if the trees are tall enough, you'll get a little downdraft like that.
Okay.
And it'll circle, and there'll be a little where the wind goes around in a circle accompanying this kind of thing. So yeah, you will get that.
I've been trapped in one of those where it's like, oh, come on, and you can't get.
Yeah, you can't go anywhere. I know.
Yeah.
Suddenly, you're really blocked. That's right. Anybody else?
Could you describe what a shelf cloud looks like? A shelf cloud or a wall cloud?
Well, I call that a line squall.
Okay, yeah. So that's a lesser form of that kind of thing, I find.
Yeah, but it's essentially a line squall. It's a solid line that you can see. I mean, here you see the clouds are all broken up and so forth. There's no constant line. But when you see a constant line across the horizon, that's a squall. The wind is going to come up really strong. It's going to be from a different direction. It's not going to last very long. You could probably sit on your board out there in the middle. You know, it might be, the major gusts will probably only be 5 to 10 minutes. So you could sit out there and drift downwind, you know, and then as soon as that line is passed, and it's really obvious as it goes from west to east. As soon as it's passed, you might get some rain and stuff, but the wind immediately drops in half from what it had been. So that's just another safety factor.
Yeah. I just know that we've had a shelf cloud that's come through here, which is a stronger form. And so you can have wind going like 10, 15 kilometers, and then it kicks to 40 to 50 knots. And so I know with windsurfing, if I'm out there, I will put my sail in the water, I'll put my weight on the mast, and I'm just trying to keep the mast under the water so that it doesn't get lifted. If it gets lifted, it will get flung hundreds and hundreds of feet, so I don't want to touch it. But so always look for those, and if you see them, you should have 10 minutes to get home before they hit you.
Yeah. I was watching that one yesterday for about a half an hour.
Yeah.
But you have to know, I mean, obviously, I'm accustomed to looking for those things.
Look at the clouds all the time.
Look at the clouds.
Are they black? Are they gray?
It's darker.
Darker.
There was cloud like this yesterday, this sort of a low gray cloud, but that line that was just across the sky there was very dark. Like it was, you know, 3 or 4 intensities darker than the regular cloud that had been there all morning. And in the really violent ones, you'll see it rolling. You'll actually see a really obvious roll in that cloud as it comes towards you.
So I recommend my students go on Google Images. Just go to Google, type in squall line, shelf cloud, all those things, and then you can get an image of what it looks like. Because once you've seen at least like a squall line is less defined, whereas a roll cloud or a wall cloud or shelf cloud, all of those, they're very unique. Once you've seen one, you'll see them all.
Okay. Very obvious. Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
My boat is about to be hauled out.
He's got to run. He's also a hero, another hero of the Outer Harbor. He rescues windsurfers and wingers that end up in his territory, which is just past the rat spit. So thank you for that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. That was
Thank you.
great. Everybody's there sitting there shivering and stuff.
Thanks very
since
much.
my background is fitness as well. How about everybody stand up for a minute? Okay,
Yes,
so we've been
please.
sitting on
Thank you.
on these things. You gotta get that blood circulating. Okay, let's see how coordinated you are. Let's see if we can do arms at the same time. Then that's the bash your neighbor. Okay, and then switch directions. Check your flexibility. Okay, we'll go forward, front, and back. Open those chests up because we're all sitting there like this. Alright. Okay, so one of the things too when you're windsurfing, one thing that you do really need to do is you need to do some stretching and warm-ups before you go out, which most of us don't do. Our warm-up is rigging our sails and getting on the water. Like, we'll see the odd person that's actually moving around and doing some stretching and stuff. So that's important. The other thing I found out is that it's really good to do stretching when you get off the water. Okay, so once you start de-rigging your sail, even if you're de-rigging your sail, bend straight over instead of bending your knees and try to stretch those hamstrings. Okay, so those are some of the things that you guys can do. Yep.
What about the hands?
Yes. Okay. Hand forward this way with a nice stretch under here. The other one is this way here. And one we don't do is hand this way and push down and pull up. Okay, especially this one here. And as we age, for those of us who age, we start to lose that flexibility. The other one is the ankle joint. Okay, as we age as well, the ankle joint doesn't work as well, the knees don't work as well, but if you can get down low and keep the heels on the ground and really flex forward in order to bend in here in that ankle joint. So if you're a skier, you want to be able to bend those as well. So another little exercise, so squats. But keep the feet flat in the ground. Don't let those heels come up, okay? Another one is up on the tippy toes. You know, because we always scrunch our toes inside our boots. So we want to try to flatten the feet out by doing some tippy toe stuff. It also works that calf muscle. Your calf is tight, toe up, bend at the waist. Okay, we call it folding at the waist. And you should feel that in here. The other side too, so you gotta keep even. All right, you guys feel a little bit warmer now? Yeah. All right.
Don't forget to have some treats. There's tons of treats on the table. Please help yourself. There's coffee. Thank you, Stephanie, for that awesome. Get us warm. We needed it. It's a nice day. So we wanted to call up next the Friends of Cherry Beach. We have representatives from the swimming community, from the kiting community, from the rowing community, and from the paddling community. And each one of them is going to introduce the community, but also introduce what it looks like to see them in distress. I think it's useful for us to know what that looks like for each other. Shortly in your washrooms, you're going to start seeing a poster about each of the sports and what distress looks like, as well as other helpful tips about how they travel it. You're going to see this in washrooms in the next few months, and anywhere else that you might suggest would be a good spot to learn about each other. We'll start with Jessica. Swimming.
Hi everyone. First I want to thank Jennifer for organizing this. This is such a fabulous event. I also want to thank Simon, who I learned so much about, like, you know, the winds and what some of you guys are doing out there on the water. And then Paul, like, blows me away. Every time he opens his mouth, he tells me something about the wind and the sky and density of air. It's like, anyway, fabulous. I'm so glad to be here. So I'm Jessica, and I am with a group of the Friends of Cherry Beach and Outer Harbor with all of the other representatives from the community. But I also have a Facebook group called Toronto Beaches Open Water Swim Group. And it was kind of funny, it started as a small meetup group about 8 years ago, and we had 300 members, and we were doing our own thing, and we were just doing our swims, and it was all about safety in numbers, swimming with a friend, swimming with a group, sharing conditions and knowledge of the water. Then COVID happened. And at COVID, we went from 300 members to 1,200 members. And it's not an open membership. Like, we have people apply to come in. It's a closed group. You have to answer the question, why do you want to join our group? So this is not something where people are just joining. These are truly people who want to swim, and many of them, most of them want to swim here because it's warm. It's protected waterway, so it stays, so it's usually 5, and it can be as much as, I'm not kidding you, 15 degrees warmer here, 15 Celsius, I'm not talking Fahrenheit, than at Woodbine Beach. That's why this is such a preferred site for swimmers. And it's protected also from a lot of wind and wave action, okay? And we don't care about the north wind. We love the north wind. We love it because it's flat as a pancake. And we're going, oh, this is a beautiful day. And we're watching all those, like, those stand-up paddle boarders on those on the ones that are like the pump-up ones. We're watching them fly across. We're going, oh. Anyway. So that's a little bit about my group, and I'd like to communicate with our group. Our group grew to 1,200, and then also I felt a responsibility to informing people on safety. So when that happened, I have this permanent post on my Facebook group that talks about safety, and I'll talk about some of the stuff that we have on it. And I'm always open to learning. I'm always learning from the people here. So if any of you want to speak to me after this and suggest things to me for postings that will help you in your proceed, because I know concern for swimmers is an issue and a concern for people within our community. So what do we do as swimmers before we go out? We want to know not so much about the air temperature or the wind, a little bit about the waves, but we're mostly interested in water temperature. For those of you who don't know it, there is a, on the Swim Drink Fish website, you can call up Cherry Beach and it'll give you the water temperature, and it's pinged every 30 minutes. So right now, if you went to Swim Drink Fish website and you called up Cherry Beach and you looked at the conditions at Cherry Beach, it would tell you what the water temperature is today. I think it's around 6.5 degrees Celsius, in case you want to know. So we care a lot about water temperature. Most of us wear wetsuits. We wear wetsuits mostly year round. We wear a 3.2, 3.2, and those are the ones that we shoulder seasons, we'll go to a 4-3, 4 and a 3, and then people who like to swim when it's like sheets of ice on top. I'm not one of those. 5 and a 4. Nobody will swim in a dry suit. It's impossible to swim in a dry suit, in my opinion. Before we go out on the water, we like to make sure that the water is warm enough to go out, and we have been recommending this for the last 3 years. I think you may have all noticed perhaps in the last 3 years that's been uptake. I'd like to think it has something to do with our group because it's the #1 thing we tell people to go out with. Last year we've updated our requirements. So what we do is we just wear this around our waist. It's also actually a bit of a, it's not a personal flotation device because it wouldn't meet any safety standard. But it's kind of nice, the headrest to lie on the back and look at the sky. But it's good to float in the water with. What we've added to our personal flotation devices, I always ask people to put a Fox 40 whistle on it so you can call for help. So it's 3 long, 3 short, 3 long. And the other thing, the most recent thing is, we hope we never get to this, but we put the swimmer name on it and emergency contact number in case of whatever. These are things that we're recommending to our community to stay safe out on the water. The other thing that we also recommend is that they stay closer to shore, because we want. I
just wanted to know where you can buy those.
Pretty much anywhere. Amazon. Amazon sells them, and it costs about $18. So you can't, like, it's not an expensive device, and it's certainly super light. It doesn't create any drag. I almost don't feel it. Like, my swim pace time is pretty much identical with or without this thing because it's super light. You can get one that actually is a dry bag option, which is a little heavier, but you can essentially put your wallet or your keys or your key fob or whatever in it, roll it up nice and tight, and you can bring it with you.
What do you call it?
I call it a tow float, or it's also called a swim buoy. All right, and it's really for high visibility. Its main purpose is visibility for
Yes,
us.
and as a windsurfer, I have to say you are seen much earlier.
Yes.
When you
Yes.
when you have one of those.
Yes. And also one of the things I was going to put out in the survey is to find out from your community, I'd be interested to know which is the best color, right? I'd love it to be bright red because then it would be like lots of cherries out on the water, but really which is the one that is the easiest for you guys to see when we're out there. Because we want to enjoy swimming and we want you to enjoy your sport, and that's really what we're all about. We really want to share the water. And I'm also a paddleboarder and I'm a kayaker as well as a swimmer. So I certainly understand that there's a need to communicate between groups and do the best we can to look out for each other, right? So when we swim, we typically swim along the shoreline, come back and forth. When there's high winds and when there are kiters on the water, I've recommended that people only swim east. We largely start at the the lifeguard station, and we swim in an easterly direction. Looking at the map here. So we usually swim along here. Some of us will swim along here to Rat Spit Point, so we will come in front of your area here, and then we will swim back to the lifeguard station. Some will swim also to the red buoy. We don't control them. Like, it's not like I can tell people what to do and where to go. We can only make recommendations. But I do have the ear, it seems, of people who are on our Facebook group. And so if there are things that we need to communicate for safety reasons, I'm there for you. What do we look like in distress? We're really floaty when we're wearing our wetsuits. We're not gonna sink. We are not gonna sink. Because we're swimming close to shore, we're usually 20 meters from safety because it's shallow. Some of the safety issues you talked about earlier. But we do have the whistle if we need the whistle. And also, if you ever see somebody take off their swim cap and they're like waving like that, that's distress. A competitive open water swimmer or a triathlete, that's what they're told in a swim race, is to take off their swim cap and wave it to get attention, or they may just wave their arms, or they'll use a whistle if they have a whistle on their throat. So if anybody has any questions, I'll take a few questions now, or you can come and talk to me.
I think the whistle's a great idea.
Yeah, that's right. And it's long enough.
And a colorful caps.
And we also, that's another thing that we have in our website, on our Facebook group, that we recommend colorful caps. Be as bright as you possibly can. Like the black seal suits that we wear, not very good. If we could get bright red wetsuits, we would, but they're all black.
Has any swimmer had really bad muscle cramps that they were in distress, not super emergency, but it wasn't comfortable?
I have swum with somebody who said they felt really good swimming. When we start feeling, when we swim in cold water, like somewhere around like between 5 and 10 degrees, I go as low as 6, 7 degrees, I'll swim in. When we go that low, I always tell people, always swim with a buddy, particularly cold water or new water. If you've never swum there before, always let somebody know that you're going out on the water before you go out, and while you're out there, generally we like to swim with a buddy, and that's the whole idea of our swim group, is a meetup. But I was swimming with somebody who decided one day not to go wear his wetsuit. He wanted to swim naked. We call it swimming naked. We're not naked. We really are naked. But it's called swimming naked. I don't swim naked. So we were swimming along, and he said, "Oh, this is great. I feel." He said, like at the beginning, it's really cold and cold and cold. I said, "Chris, how are you doing?" He said, I'm cold, I'm not doing so well. And then after about 20 minutes, he said, "You know, I feel great." I said, "Yeah, but you're swimming like crap." I said, "Get to shore." Because what you end up happening when we're swimming is you start feeling good is when you really are not doing well, when your core is dropping. So we went to shore quickly. So what we run into is we don't run into cramping so much as being a major issue,
but we run into people who are going out in cold water and getting this euphoric sense of strength and endurance and feeling like Superman, and they're not. They're not doing well, and that's my biggest concern is cold water swimmers here.
It's good to recognize that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jessica. That was next we have Anna from Water Rats, paddler.
Hello. So there's only about 30 paddlers at Water Rats, but we are immediately adjacent to you and we are launching immediately across your path. So I apologize if we seem in your way. There's no way to avoid it. That's where we land, and it's just how it is. So I hope everyone is respectful. We certainly enjoy seeing everybody, particularly the beginners. It's really fun watching the beginners. So with the paddlers, of course, we do all the normal things. We have life jackets, whistles, bailers, something else vital that I've forgotten. And so we do all the normal things. And generally, as long as the boat is upright, we're good. If you see someone waving their paddle in the air, that is the sign of distress. But of course, if the boat is overturned, that's when they really need possibly your assistance. They might be fine, they should be able to self-rescue, but they might appreciate the moral support of you coming up and going to need help. The other thing is, particularly with a canoe, when they're overturned, they're full of air, and it's the flipping them over that puts the water in the boat. So if you were able to help a little bit with that flipping it over, the best way is just to lift up one end. If you've got there's a person in the water, there's a boat the wrong way up, and you just lift it up slightly, the water stays out of it, and you can just go flip, and it's back up. The person can crawl in. Even if you're in the middle out there, it's possible then for them to go on their way, bail it out, get it back in business. So that's, and the same with the kayaks. Once it's more or less in the upright position, they can scramble back. They should be able to scramble back in. So we appreciate the help. If you happen to see it, with any luck, you won't. Anyway, thank you very much. And as I say, I apologize that we're always crossing paths. It's just life.
Thank you, Anna. Anna is also a land hero for the area. She has organized the Toronto Nature Stewards for Cherry Beach.
I do the nature stewarding at Cherry Beach. Anybody who ever wants to relieve stress by ripping out invasive weeds or pulling out trees, come and talk to me.
She's helped us do some amazing work around this whole area of Cherry Beach, not just around our club. So thank you, Anna. Next we have Harold from Hanlon's Rowing Club, a great neighbor, next to Water Rats. Go ahead. Let us know what's in distress.
Thanks, Jennifer.
And sorry, I prompted this on Harold about 1 minute ago, so.
Thanks, Jennifer. I would like to echo Jessica's thank yous to everyone who's spoken today so far, to TWC and Jennifer for inviting all of us. It's been great. The rowers, yes. We have an established traffic pattern, like Anna was saying, which means we will intersect. Typically we row down to the Eastern Basin and out past here, and then back. So this is our typical pattern on this side of the harbor. We also row on this side, up and down as well. And we do follow that pattern because, of course, rowers row backwards, right? Which makes it very difficult for us to see. The larger boats will have coxswains facing forward, steering and keeping an eye out for everyone else. But the smaller boats, the singles and the doubles, don't have a coxswain. So they're the ones turning every 10 strokes to make sure that they're not going to run into something. And like I think most of us, the biggest hazards for us are the huge boats that leave the big wake. Our biggest worries, though, actually are the swimmers. So to Jessica, we really appreciate those that wear the swim buoys. we see some that don't, and that's a real worry for us because we do not want to hit them, and especially the singles and the doubles that don't have a coxie, they are at risk of hitting someone with a paddle, particularly if they don't have the swim buoys and they're really hard to see. They have only black, they have no color. So we would ask that you that swimmers do wear color and use the swim buoy. In terms of rescue, all of the rowers will have whistles. Each boat should have a cell phone. We have a rule in the spring, cold water rule, which says that until the water reaches a certain temperature, all the boats must be accompanied by a coach boat. So if there is something that happens in the spring, there should be a coach boat nearby. Come middle of June, though, you may see 1 or 2 rowers by themselves when the water is warmer. They should be able to self-rescue. They may appreciate, though, if they are flipped over, moral support or even help with that. Depending upon the situation, they may come to shore. They may be able to turn themselves over and get back in the boat. But again, like others have said, if you're seeing this or you're hearing 3 long calls on the whistle, that may mean someone's in distress. It may be a matter of finding other rowers out there to help them, but they may appreciate your help if they're in the water and the boat is upside down. So, anything else? Does that cover it?
Any questions?
Any questions or any other comments?
Do you wear life jackets?
No.
No.
We're not required to, and we can't, basically, right? It's not, you can't row with a life jacket on. So there are, every rower will have an inflatable life jacket in the boat with them. Okay. Often worn around the around the waist, and then if you need it, you deploy it, right? Okay. So, any other
amazing
questions? And
thank you. Next, we have Andrew from the kiteboarding community.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Chuck, I'm not a resident of Toronto. Chuck asked me to speak here, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about what distressed kiteboarders look, but I also want to talk a little bit about extreme conditions and extreme cold water conditions. One other thing about kiteboarding is that we kiteboard all year round. Even in this harbor, I have kiteboarded past water rats when it's frozen, right? On the ice, on a snowboard. We have gone in shoulder season when it's half water, half ice, and jumped over icebergs. There's a lot of like crazy cool things that are possible to do on the water, and I wanted to just address some of the safety stuff that the kiteboarders do, and hopefully can draw to your sports as well. And I also have like a bag of goodies with some safety stuff that I usually bring, and I want to talk a little bit about that. But the first thing I want to do before this is just to commemorate like some of the things that have passed. So I was out on the water when Jason passed, when he kiteboarded when that squall came through. And one of the messages that he passed on to me is he told me that he was known to kite for very long periods of time, and he said there's no such thing as I feel cold, there's only I am not adequately dressed. So, and part of being dressed is not just the equipment that you use on the water, but it's also planning for if an emergency was supposed to happen, and when you come back to shore to have the right equipment. The other thing I wanted to talk about is also to commemorate not just the lands that we're on, but also some of the traditions. If you read on some of the people who were here before us, they talk about the wind gods. They talk about how the wind god is shackled over the winter and has a lot of energy and is extremely violent. They also name the directions. So the fawn comes from the south and it's steady, it's nice. There's a moose and there's, I think it's a cougar for the east and the west. But the north wind is called the polar bear. It's vicious, and sometimes wind directions will change from south to north, and it's extremely dangerous when that occurs, because north winds are, as people have spoke about, are really, really hard. So it's very important to check things beforehand. And so before I jump into some of the cold water safety equipment, who knows what the biggest piece of safety equipment everyone has? There you go, say it. What is it? Your brain, yeah. Your brain is the biggest piece of safety equipment that you have. You should be checking the forecast. You should be not just looking at the forecast, look at the weather radar, look at other charts, see if there's like a pressure system coming through, see if there are different forecasts that are saying different things. That's probably indicative of a storm going to pass and is going to be dangerous, like those squall lines that go through. And what's the second biggest piece of safety equipment that we all have? It's our ability to communicate. It's having a whistle. It is telling people I'm going out. It's talking to the community, talking to people who you're going with, working together when things are out there. Because when things go wrong, it's everyone out on the water helping each other, all of the different sports that are there. And so it's really important that we look out for each other and we tell people where we're going, how long we're planning to be. And people will say, hey, maybe I think it's going to shift north, be careful. Or the wind size, or sorry, the sail size or the kite size that you're going to use is important. And so here's some of the other safety equipment that I bring. So the first one is I always have a dry bag. So a dry bag it works as flotation, but most importantly, as people saw when today we started to add layers. The sun just came out. We're going to take off layers. What's really important is when we take off our layers that we're able to store, our wool and our stuff in a dry place. So you can, keep your equipment dry. You can keep it on the beach. You have spare things that you can hand out. So you can keep, like your sweaters, you can wear undergarments, you can have your towel, everything that you need can be here. And this can also be used as a tossing aid. You can toss your dry bag into the water. If it's properly sealed, it will float. It can be used as a piece of safety. The second piece of safety that you have if you're going out on ice are ice picks. So you can open the ice picks, and if you fall into the water, you can grab the ice and you can pull up and you can go out there. If ever you go on any sort of ice, you should always have ice picks on you. And as you saw, it's very easy to keep. Hang around your neck. You don't even feel it when it's there, but it's super important that you don't look into your bag. If you fall into the ice, you can use your bag to float. You can pull your ice picks. You can climb out. And then the last thing that I'm going to mention is safety just doesn't end when you get in off the water. If you go out in extremely cold conditions, it's very important that you have the right equipment in your vehicle, right? Many people take the keys of their vehicle into the water. Your vehicle is another piece of safety equipment that you have. Inside your vehicle, you can have candles, you can have propane heaters, you can have blankets, you have your phone. It's very important that you lock a key outside of your vehicle in a way that it won't get ice, that you can access on the inside. So that's one. And then the other one is you should assume that your car is not going to start. If your car doesn't start, it's that sense of heat. That's something that you need. So one thing that you can do is bring a candle, leave a candle in your car. In the wintertime, I have like propane heaters. I have a little gas stove that I can use in emergencies. But most important is when you go out with other people and it's the end of the day, make sure that their car starts. Like make sure that they can go home at the end of the night. And that's a really important part of safety as well, is make sure that you're watching out for each other and you're considerate for when people are coming and going. Ask people when they're leaving if you see them going out late. Do they have an emergency plan? And work with each other. And so a little bit more about kiteboarding. There are two states of a kiter when they're not riding. So when their kite is in the air, the only distressed part is if they don't have their board. If they don't have their board, they're going to body drag to get to the board. Once the board is on their feet, they can ride again. When you go close to a kite in the air, it is always imperative that you stay windward or in front or upwind of the kiter and never downwind or leeward of the kiter, because if you're downwind, there is a chance that the kite can drop on you. If you remain upwind, you will remain safe. And it's the same thing when you're passing. When a kiteboarder is jumping or they're doing anything, they sometimes can lose control and they use the downwind portion to reduce their speed, to reduce the apparent wind, to gain control. So the downwind part of a kite in the air is very, very important. When a kiteboarder drops their kite, there are two states. There's either a state of they're trying to reattempt to launch the kite. I'm just gonna pause as this boarder. So there are two states. One is they have dropped their kite. They are hopefully waiting for a gust to relaunch their kite. And in this instance, you never want to go in between a kiter and their kite lines, because you can get wrapped, you can get tangled. When the kite relaunches, those lines become taut and will catch anything in that area. So if it's a calm day, if things are okay, the kiter will keep their kite in the water and they will attempt to make a recovery and to relaunch their kite. If they are unable to relaunch their kite, there's not enough wind, they're tired, they're cold, what they will do is they'll go through a process to wrap up their lines. We have one safety hook that we pull, it flags the kite out on one line, and we'll wrap up the lines, and we will sit onto our kite like a boat, and we will use the canopy of the kite like a sail to drift downwind. When a kiter is on their kite drifting downwind, they generally will be okay, because we will plan for wearing equipment for the rescue, like we'll wear a wetsuit, we'll wear a dry suit, we will go downwind, and we will generally be okay. The danger is when a kiter doesn't have control of their kite is neither properly in the air or in the water, it's looping, that's like extremely dangerous, or the kiter gets separated from their kite. And that is the second safety thing that we have, is we can release ourselves completely from the kite. And so in instances, for example, if we see a squall line coming through, we're stuck on the water, we don't want to come to shore because we don't want to hit trees, we can lower our kites, drop it in the water, hold on to it, and then if the squall comes through, we can let go and we can be separated. And so if you see a kite whistling downwind, it's very likely that the rescue doesn't have to be where the kite is, it has to be where the kiter is, because that person is going to be upwind. And so if you see kiteboarding equipment, boards people lose all the time, but if you see like a rogue, I'll pause for that. Yeah, if you see a rogue kite going downwind, it's very likely that the kiter is in distress. And the other thing that you can do is you can also, if you find a kite, it's possible that there was a kiter and there was an incident, but calling the Coast Guard sometimes will help, because kiteboarders will call in when they lose their kites to the Coast Guard. And so I think those are the main parts. And then the other thing I want to discuss really quickly is for extreme cold water, dry suits versus wetsuits. So I have both a dry suit and a very thick wetsuit. I have it's an 8765. It's a super thick wetsuit, and I moved from a dry suit to a wetsuit because, one, as he said, dry suits can leak if you have tears. The second thing that occurs is if you bop in the water, so if you jump and you land, the dry suit can burp. The water from the inside of the suit, when compressed by the water, will come out of the seal, and if a wave overtops you, water is going to go inside your dry suit, and then you start to feel cold. And so one of the things that you can do if you want to go to extreme conditions is wear a wetsuit and then put your dry suit on top of it. And then you have both, right? And so in extreme conditions, in normal conditions, you want thin layers and multiple. In extreme cold water, you want to dress for the rescue, not for the activity. So if you go out for an hour, you feel hot, you're sweaty, come in, take off layers, go back out, you're feeling good. Don't get stuck out there underdressed. And that's like the biggest thing, is be prepared. Cool. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Now we have Stacy with the Toronto Marine Unit. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks for having me. No, I'm even learning a lot myself here. I can just talk a little bit about the Marine Unit where we are. Not very far from here. We can do possibly to help you guys out and you guys to help us out as well. It sounds mostly like in this protected area and with the Outer Harbor Marina, or the community here and the Cherry Beach community, because you guys are all planned. And great rescue and life-saving skills like you guys have within here, mostly planned. We respond mostly to a various amount of emergency calls, so hopefully you don't need our assistance in this protected area. And if you're well prepared and know your own abilities, then most of our calls are not involving the clubs and the windsurfers and the kiteboarders from these. It's mostly people that are going to try it on their own, or like I said, not telling a buddy where they are, and they're gone out to an area of the water where they haven't researched the area as this is Lake Ontario. This is protected in here, so it's safer. But like when you get out onto Woodbine Beach, we just had exactly that squall that happened yesterday. Our guys went out yesterday to near Marie Curtis Park. So our area is huge. We cover out to to Peel, and they're not even in the water anymore. So it would be us and Coast Guard, and same out towards Durham, to the U.S. Border with the U.S. Coast Guard and Canadian. So again, back to like what we have a very broad, huge area that we cover. But just as yesterday, just not scaring everybody with the wind, but just knowing your own abilities, and the research is so important, having the right skills and safety equipment. So out at Marie, so 10 o'clock yesterday, the winds picked up from the west, and about half a kilometer, we got called out in about 8-foot chop. Our guys went out west, and he couldn't get back in. He was we located him about half a mile offshore, and I guess he went east from the west wind and couldn't get back in. And that one came from a caller, a concerned caller, and that's how we get a lot of our calls. Again, so the social media, I'm starting to do that as well with the Marine Unit. It is so important for other people to know what your distress symbols are, and most times it's obvious. So someone called for this guy. He didn't call himself. So if that person didn't let anybody know, we might have been in more trouble. We had a lot of it at the beginning of the season. Guys getting themselves from Woodbine, same thing, kiteboarding, going out, not having a cell phone. They got themselves 5 miles out, and that was at the beginning of summer. There was 5 of them. Our boat got called to people that were 1 and 2 miles out, and they ended up pointing out to just communicating. There's other people out here. Our guys ended up 5 miles out. People on a kiteboard, just sitting on the board, freezing conditions. They would have been gone, because, like I said, you're protected in here. That north wind, that's what it was. We get it every single time. Our guys are when we know that the weather is going to change. We're ready to go, suited up in different equipment than when we even have, because that north wind takes people from, if you get into that East Gap, and you get further away from shore you are, the wind's stronger, and you can go right across. Like it's 26 miles across here to Niagara, and it will take you out, and you keep going in with the swells. So that's why I said the safety equipment, being prepared, having a phone, even a portable VHF is another way. Like calling 911 is don't try and look for all these phone numbers to call the Marine Unit. We still get a lot of calls, people calling direct to. All your resources are through 911. The dispatchers will get a boat going at the same time they're talking to you and communicating. Same with hailing the Coast Guard and stuff like that. Call 911 for an emergency. If you want to wait out a storm and you're stuck and you need some help, you have our front desk. Call our front desk, because we'll call Coast Guard, and we'll start making our way to you as well. I think *69 on your phone is to Coast Guard as well. But yeah, like a VHF, the whistle, having like the life jacket, that obviously with the cold water, all the sports, like some people aren't required to wear them. Just knowing what water you're in, your own abilities, because it's too late with cold water. With freezing cold water, you're going down with it, like usually within that first minute. We have most people go down in cold water. Again, so just basically, most of you probably know where we are, just south of the Rogers Center is our central base. We have like 460 square miles of water. So, and we have a very good fleet in Toronto. We have 9 like different types of rescue boats. We work with our lifeguard services as well. It's just because we have such a huge area, you might not see us. We might be all over depending on what we do, because we have that many boats, but we only have about 35 officers doing various different things in the division. And so we may only have on a day shift and an afternoon shift. We have a night shift coverage as well. We may only have 2. We'll try to have 3 boats is the max we can get at a time on a certain shift. 2 to 3 boats in that area. And we also have like any body of water. So that's our central area. We go to the Bluffs. There's a substation there, and at Humber. But we have trucks and rescue like blow up dinghies and stuff like that, because we have the Don River, the Humber River, any body of water within the service is calling the Marine unit, so we could be out doing something else. Other than that, we try to patrol and like flag the colors, know that we're around. Also, same with me, myself. I've been at the Marine unit for 14 years on the response boats, and I do various things with the underwater search and rescue, and working with the intel stuff now, and as well as the community officer. So I'm the officer that I can give you my information. Posting is new to us, but I understand, like, just to get out basic safety information, it's probably it's the new way to do everything. So if anybody has any questions, can let me know. And yeah.
If I use my cell phone, I call from the water, are you able to locate me using my cell phone signal?
Yeah, there's they're able to get like our Latin long, and we can convert it. And there's like, yeah, for sure we can. I think like even I've used mine, like it'll cover a good distance out there. I'm trying to remember when I was out with the Coast Guard when it stopped working, and probably at least get 10 miles out that it's working. Yeah, so that's so just anything like that we can, like any information I can give you to help you guys for safety stuff, and same with for us. Basically, like if we're coming to you guys like an emergency and things that you've planned out didn't work, and you're out there, we normally will go up, well, kind of with your cold water, like you're not gonna be able to save yourself, and we're aware of that. We'll try to get close to you. Usually we approach downwind, just with our engines and stuff like that, but we're also, we have the kite boards and stuff that we're aware of all we don't want to be fouling our props, and then we're no help to anybody. So we may come in and we'll assess the situation. We are responding to you. We'll kind of see how much of a hurry we need. If you guys have flotation device on and you're up above the water, we can assess the situation a little bit better. But we'll generally come in, try to make some type of decision how we're going to rescue you. Our respondents on our boat, we can take them right out and get to water level, and just we're mostly concerned with you. I know the kite board and all the equipment is really expensive, but when we're coming to you, our responsibility is you guys, not the board. And depending on the situation, we will try to save both if we can, or we'll get you, and then we'll call another boat if we can to get you the property as well. But basically, yeah, I'm trying to think of help you guys out. Anything that we have very good response boats like all year round. We have the hovercraft, which is not it's not really made for this lake very well, so we're not going to be using that. We have our ice boat. We're all winter long. We're using our ice boat, and then also a go to rescue as well. We have all the equipment, and we will walk out onto the ice as well. Yes.
Can you just clarify? So someone would call 911, and then you'd be dispatched, and then you talked about the star 69 for Coast Guard.
Yeah, like for you, if you have a cell phone and you want to use your own cell phone, star 69 to go to the Coast Guard.
Is that preferred?
It's like I would say if you're out into, that's why know where we are, and if you call 911, the dispatcher, and that's the thing, is knowing where you are, location. I can see the CN Tower, we get that a lot, and that you could be anywhere. Your land, like like locations that you can say to 911 dispatcher on the water, and they're immediately transferring to the Marine unit. So it's probably the fastest way. You'll get if you're at Leslie Spit, you'll get 55 Division, or you'll get the land guys. You'll get us, and then we're the ones that also will notify Coast Guard. If you call Coast Guard yourself on your own VHF on 16, the Mayday channel, they will start a search right away, but they'll also call the local division. They'll be calling the Marine unit as well. We all communicate together. On VHF, we're monitoring 16 all the time, and channel 12 as well.
Two questions.
Yeah.
One for people who use their cell phone that you've rescued. For most of our sports, it's very minimal what we're wearing. And when I've had my phone out on the water in a waterproof case, the screen doesn't work. You can't touch it what equipment have people used to effectively communicate via cell phone with you that you've rescued that you know of, so we can buy it. And then the second question, yeah, and then that's the second question.
Yeah, no, the cell phone they've used, I haven't asked them personally, but they've called on their cell phone. I don't know of any other tricks. We even have
cell phone bags that are good to touch. You have to have those.
So I find when it gets wet, I can't, even when I touch it, it misinputs everything.
Our own screens on our boat do the same thing. When it's wet, like it's sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then,
that's why going with a buddy, having your whistle, that type of thing, like no, the sail plan is huge. Even the sail plan that you're not even with a buddy, but someone can report like you didn't come home, and then we get a lot of those calls and we'll start a search right away. But having the sail plan is huge, because then we can start and get the search in this, and we can start searching the right location right away instead of finding out, because usually it's totally wrong sometimes from the start.
The second question I have is, you mentioned VHF radios. They're first of all expensive, and second of all, I heard that you need to have proper training. How can we make VHF more accessible to us watergoers compared to yachts and other, like they can go through their clubs to get the equipment? I don't feel like we're well supported for VHF.
Yeah, no, you're right about the training. To actually talk on the van, you need the license.
Yeah.
But like safety, like the cost, like you'd have to, I can't do anything about
the question is, how can we make it, or how can you make it more accessible to us? That's the question.
Oh, well, it'd be Transport Canada for the VHF course, but I don't think anyone's gonna say anything if you have a VHF for an emergency reason and you get on and you're calling in a mayday. We've had like they're all on most of these bigger, even the pleasure crafts out here, the bigger ones, they have them as well. And yeah, the operator and the operator's going to get his VHF license, but people on board have called for a mayday, and there's going to be no discretion at all. Like, no one's going to be searching for you speaking on the radio and getting yourself into trouble. It's just you if you decide you want to have one for your own safety. If you feel like it's going to work better than a cell phone, you can rely on it, then it's up to you. Yep. Oh, sir.
Sorry.
No, you go.
For your VHF, what are any other channels? 16?
Channel 12. Yeah. So 16, like when you can look at to get the license, like 16 is like you don't have conversations on 16, right? That's like you hail over. Our working station that we use is 12, and the different marinas use like 6A. There's a yeah. So they have their own working channels. Yes.
The reason that the sailors get into trouble vary a lot, and for the rest of us, I keep thinking it would be useful education to understand how they got into trouble. Do you have a database of the people you've rescued and how they got into that mess and what the problem was?
Yeah, no, just for specific crimes and stuff we do, but not for the rescues. No, we don't.
Equipment failure, I'd say, is probably pretty high up there.
Pardon?
Equipment failure, or just not looking at your forecast. Those are probably the main two.
Yeah, not inexperience, that type of thing. Yeah, that's what I said. We don't, for you guys, like being within this club here, we actually don't have a lot of problems. That's why I was like, this sport is amazing that you're doing, and not to scare anybody from the conditions and stuff like that. That's what I mean. You're prepared, and you have backup systems and help and support. Your own rescue tender boats, that stuff. We don't normally have problems with your sport. It's the people that have randomly gone off on their own or from a beach and they didn't know, and the weather just picked up on them. It's usually that a lot of times it's that north wind. Every time we have that north wind, we're getting a huge problem. After COVID was not the sport itself at all, just even those dinghies that you can buy at Canadian Tire off the beach. Every single time a north wind, we would get that, and we'd get them 5 miles out, and it's just lucky that we've even found them, because it's so yeah. Yes.
What's the difference between you and the Coast Guard?
So we're a support unit for the Toronto Police, but we're one of the only support units that we're a support unit, as well as we're actively answering 911 calls as well. we're the police. We're just on the boats. So we have a designated area to cover Toronto, and so we mostly are search and rescue as well as enforcement. If it's a major lake search, we're mandated actually under Coast Guard. We work with them and train with them, and we'll assist them. But we're Toronto Police, but we have a certain area of the water that we cover, including because there's residents on the island as well, and we're the only ones. We're specifically trained, even for our emergency response, like our SWAT team. Say, like, we will bring people over. We're the drivers of the boat for Toronto Police for any major incident around the water.
So do you do the life jacket checks as well when you're not super busy?
Like control, yeah, make sure that they're like Transport Canada approved, so it's approved. But yeah, yeah, and we're very friendly as well with our checks. Make sure everything that they have on board, especially, and we'll work with our auxiliary officers as well. At the beginning of the season, go to the launch ramps and stuff like that. Just a little bit of communication.
You have cameras in the inner harbor. How far do they go?
We can
see what's going on.
We can't see the whole inner harbor from ours. Towards up to the ferry terminal, we can see a little bit out into the West Gap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did Coast Guard launch from Toronto, or do they launch from points outside your jurisdiction?
Points outside, yeah. They may come in and stay like on any given shore for a couple weeks at a time. But yeah. Yep.
Is anyone monitoring like the boat speed in the harbor?
Yes. Yeah, I know this year there was like, since COVID again, like the boat traffic, motor vessels have gone up huge in this area, and this outer harbor channel. I understand there's been a huge problem with, because it's a beach and you can swim, but they don't have any, the port itself doesn't have any rules against like wakeboarding and towing, just the speeds. But we do, towards the end of the summer, we finally got, the Port Authority has its own laws under the Canada Marine Act, and they've just designated, we just got authority the last part of the summer to enforce some Port Authority rules, which is that speed limit.
In the whole body of water, or just outer
within
harbor?
the inner and outer harbor, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What is the speed limit?
So maximum in the outer harbor then is 19 kilometers.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And then 5 within 150 meters of shore, 5 kilometers, or sorry, 5 knots. So it's yeah. So the max is it's like around 10 kilometers is within 150 meters, and then the fastest you can go inside is 19 kilometers. And again, and there's the criminal code that will endanger, because that gives us dangerous operation. And that's a vehicle or a vessel. So so reporting a boat description, getting those license numbers, people on board, any other descriptors, and calling our unit if someone's reckless, and because we can investigate if someone's, for the swimmers, for everybody out there at that constant wake, or someone we get a lot of the sea news, like in and out of people and stuff like that. We get a lot of that. We do investigate that. Sorry? Yes. Yeah. I can actually, I was leaving it at the club here, for the Marine unit. I can give you that number. I can give it to you guys now. The Marine unit front desk. Do you want to take it now?
Sure.
It's 416 808 5860, and that's the front desk at the Marine unit.
Is that to report something?
That you can report something with that. 416 808 5860. And that's like ongoing things, report anything, even if it's a slight emergency and you feel more comfortable calling that number. That is, the guy on the front desk is also like any other, not like any other division, I should say. He also is like a dispatcher. He'll get on the radio to the boats right away if it is emergency. and you're still going to get resources fast. 911, I just have to, I have to just emphasize 911 is an emergency, but if you feel more comfortable calling that front desk number, you can as well. We'll get just as fast response.
Do you have a prioritization of emergencies out in the water? Like one thing is more important than the other?
Yeah, because we only have 2 or 3 boats, and we're the only ones, and so we will reach out to Coast Guard, especially if they're in the Toronto area, to help us. We have volunteer search and rescue as well, and yes, we have to prioritize as well. Yep.
I just wanted to say that I'm going to post those numbers on the bulletin board. It doesn't help you if you're on the water, but if you're on land, it helps.
Thank you, Betty.
Yep.
And then you mentioned like you guys have service all year round. What other launch points are there in Lake Ontario and Lake Erie? Because my idea is like if you have issues and you know where you are relative to the closest launch point, you can tell 911, hey, I'm just east of.
Oh, for sure. That's what
where can we learn about that?
No, like the general landmarks. So knowing where you're going before you go out, and knowing the landmarks. So we would just use like east of Cherry Beach, like for down here, the headlands, Outer Harbor Channel, the East Gap, just any specific landmark that we would use. We have like the launch ramps. There's ash bridges the launch ramps at ash bridges, like onto the main lake. Just knowing anything on the map specific, that's what we're going by.
But where do you?
You guys probably might have more experience on the water than the turnaround of officers at the Marine unit. So it takes 3 to 5 years for the officers to get comfortable operating all our different vessels and handling all of our different various calls. So, but they do cycle us out after 5 to 10 years sometimes. So you do have newer officers coming through. So you guys are more expert with your sport and stuff like that. So general, anything that we, if you want to let me know that we can help you guys. But just like on the regular map, the guys will they have their own personal phones as well. We have regular GPS. We don't have anything special. So anything that you guys can say like on the general map will help us.
Inside in terms of sort of the main landmarks that the Marine unit references, so in the event.
Yeah, I think I was I helped you do that one. Yeah. There's nothing. That's what I said. There was nothing I could think of. We don't have any code names for certain things. Just like the Leslie Spit, the East Deck. Just what they are is what they are. So that's knowing your the people that you've let know your route, your plan. And that's where we can go to too, is any witnesses, friends. They said they were going to be here, they're going to be back at this time, so then we can start searching. And you've given out labeled general areas where you're going to be, or is for you to know as well before you go out. I'm going to be windsurfing in this area.
Is there any fee for your rescue or for salary?
No. Yeah. I think of anything else that could assist you guys.
I have a question. Just in terms of like perceived risk and actual risk, how often have you had to respond to calls like collisions with jet skis or sea-doos and people swimming or paddleboarding, or like how risky are those watercraft?
Probably since COVID, like there's more boats on the water. And with less experience as well. But still, like we had that collision right out here at the beginning in May. That was an impaired case where they were going by at night and they hit one of the rocks that were jetted out here off the land. Sea-doos hitting each other, not like probably like maybe we could probably get 2 to 5 in a whole season at the most.
And what about them hitting other?
Still not often. Yeah. So that's what it has increased slightly because just of the amount of boats and stuff that are out there now. Again, and with less experience. So reporting the operation is important still, because like I said, this area is busy with all your guys' sport, and so if they're ripping through here, we want to know about it. We do our best to do whatever we can with it within our resources that we have as well. Like we have a lot of searches we're doing for missing people, a lot of other like police related calls that we're dealing with that take up our time. Going out to make sure even an overturned boat or someone needing a tow, we try not to get tied up in that too long, because it takes us off the water for other stuff. But we do take the calls very serious, and you can call our front desk, and if it's an ongoing thing, we can just keep keeping the information, and then eventually my boss is on par with me if because I take it very serious. I don't like the disrespect that I'm seeing on the water from some of these operators at all. So, and either does he. So if we can get enough, and we just need enough information and some witnesses, and we will investigate it as much as we can. Yep.
Yeah, my question relates to data collection. You said earlier you keep data on a lot of the stuff that you do, but do you keep records on these accidents that may occur that are day renters versus owner operator motorcraft? Day renters, like people who are renting like a jet ski for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, versus somebody like, are there more accidents caused by people who are renting equipment versus owning equipment, or you don't?
Actually, we don't, and we've had, in my experience, I've owned more than, like, I've had more problems with people that are owning it themselves. Yeah. But that is something I could try to track a little bit differently. I know with our report systems, like, it does we can probably try to figure that one out as more. Yeah. Yes.
How are the rental people actually, like the clients, getting away with operating inside the harbor without a harbor license?
How are they? Sorry.
How are they operating inside the harbor without a harbor license for all the rental crafts?
They can't. They have to have
Exactly.
They can't. They have to have the like, we will charge them.
And I see you guys tow some of their jet skis and watercrafts away. So.
Yeah. Within like, we do use discretion with the Port Authority, but because there's a specific reason for that, and we have the keep out markers, the speeds and yeah. So we are so depending on how they're operating, we're pretty strict with that if they're coming through. But no, you have to have the operator's permit as well. Yep.
So if there's a search and rescue, you're there, which is amazing, thank you so much. If it escalates to an emergency situation where medical is required, do you provide that during the search and rescue process, or is somebody else called in at that point?
Oh no, we would prioritize, and it'd be the emergency, like if there was if while we were doing a search and something, like, we would prioritize and handle the immediate cause, or like,
okay, so you
yeah.
handle that as well.
Yep.
You don't call somebody else in to support that?
Yeah, no, we would probably call someone else to continue our search and then handle the emergency at the time.
Are you asking though, can they treat the medical? Are you ready to treat the medical?
Yeah, so we did have paramedics that worked with us on board, and now they're on with the fire department, so we can call them. And we're trained, we take every year, we're trained, updated on our first aid and marine first aid. So but we'll have the resources, like we would, if we needed to, start first aid and whip that person to the closest responder or landside or appropriate. It's always on the go. We're constantly, we don't have, we have our procedures, the way we do it, but it's outside, we think outside the box as well.
Do you carry a stretcher?
Yep. Yeah, we have the spine boards with first aid kits as well. Yep. Okay. Thought I saw a hand. Oh, yeah.
Why would your first aid first responders get transferred? Is that
that's outside my pay grade. Yeah. I've spoken to, because I've done first aid, and it got into somewhere where the fireboat couldn't. So the fireboat was about half an hour later, and I had the members at that marina try to write a letter.
That would be extremely rare.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but we can different situations where we've gone out to a medical call, been faster, and then whipped them to the closest. We would use the old ferry, Rochester Ferry Terminal one time. An ambulance met us there, but we can also pick up. I know the paramedics as well, and we can pick them up and take them. But yeah, generally, that's. I don't know if that's ever going to come back.
Is there an average time it would take to get there to here, to Outer Harbor?
From where? From
your home base?
Probably like 2 minutes max. Like we could whip
2
across.
minutes?
Yeah, probably 2 minutes. Yeah.
2 minutes from Inner
our,
Harbor?
yeah, about 2 minutes from, I would say, from our boathouse to here.
Really?
Yeah.
But you're not always at the boat sometimes.
No, that's what I mean. We're all over. Yeah, and that's unfavorable conditions as well. But you know, we're not really that far, like to come across the harbor.
That's great.
Maybe yeah. I'll have to try that if I can do that. But yes.
So I know there's probably bigger legal implications, but if the club has instructors trained in wilderness first aid, in your mind, should the club also have a spinal board?
The club,
this
like
club.
us. Should we have a spinal board?
Like yeah, to transfer someone on, yeah, it's possible. Like yeah, it's you could. I would I could recommend that. Yeah. I'm not from the First Aid Society, but
if you're going to get a spinal board here, you need to have people here trained to use it.
That's my area.
yeah, that's what. Yeah, I thought.
Yeah, but
yeah.
you're up north all the time.
What you need, remember?
Yeah, just even, I think we've even used it for different things. We had someone with one of the ladies swimming across the lake with prosthetic legs, and we use the spine board to help transfer from one boat to the next as well. You can use it to on your rescues, take it out to a boat to help get it under, like ice rescue especially, when you put it underneath somebody to transfer them over onto the ice. That's another reason. But yeah, I'm just
amazing.
Yeah.
Thank
I've
you.
missed anything besides. Yeah, we get and also just for anyone to know, you guys are out on the beach. We get a lot of our calls. We call it, like, if you see property, like clothing, a lot of times on the beach that they're actually gone swimming, but for missing persons, that type of thing, we actually classify it as tombstoning. If you see, and that you can report that right to the front desk, 911. No, and it's someone that's going to go in to drown themselves, and it's all of their clothing. Sometimes there's a note with it, like wallet, everything in a little pile. And usually that person on a beach, it's a broader area because it's weighted in, but on a water's edge of rocks, something like that. We have that, and that's a classic case of tombstoning. So you can call that into us right away if you guys see that onto any of your shorelines.
Like it happens a lot?
It's more often than you think. Yeah, that's what I mean. We're busy. There's a lot of stuff that we're doing that it's not advertised on the news at all. So our boats are busy. We've gotten really busy since COVID with just more people going towards the water and out on the water. And so we are doing our best to try to keep up with everything, but we need more. Just like all the services, everybody's low on numbers for response, so they're definitely not giving us any extras, because uptown people they need to get more officers more than we do, but we are getting busier and things, and it's only specific to the water, and we're the only ones able to do it. So that's why it is difficult for us to get to everything, and we have to prioritize safety first.
Thank you so much.
I wasn't sure if I should ask this question without getting myself in trouble. This 19 km/h speed limit,
Sorry?
19 kilometer an hour speed limit in the harbor. How does it apply? And you can elaborate. How does it apply to us as windsurfers? Is there a cutoff speed limit without? Because we don't even
Yeah, unless you have a motor on there, you're okay.
So,
yeah, that's more power to you.
Speaking really loudly, I start to lose my breath. So I don't want to have to ask the help from my other partner over here who must have his updated first aid. Okay, so I want to ask a question. How many people in this group have first aid or CPR? Current. 1, 2, yeah, not very many.
I had my hand up. I was number 2.
Okay, so one of the big deals for me as a first aid instructor is that I really encourage you to get a first aid course and to take especially at least a CPR course. They are available through all sorts of different areas. I work for a company called Adet Inc., which actually originally was an aquatic group and kind of expanded beyond that. I also work with the Life Saving Society of Canada, so that's who I teach my first aid through. I do defib and CPR courses. So the big thing is that in order to be certified, you need to take a course. Now, in order to have to be an instructor here, you have to have a first aid course. And not only that, you either have to have, what is it, bronze medallion?
Yeah.
Or both? The both?
It used to be and or. I think now first aid is
Yeah.
required.
So first aid is required, but is bronze cross, or is it bronze cross and both? Is it both?
It's not both.
Okay. So the question came up about the spine board. All right. The problem with people with spine boards. The problem with people who don't know how to do a rescue with a spine board, they need to be trained. All right, and in order to do a water rescue, you really should be trained at bronze cross or higher, which would be bronze cross or National Lifeguard. So either one of those, and it has to be not pool related, it has to be outdoor, it has to be lakes and stuff. And those are two separate courses because, again, those safety features of the water temperature and stuff, so when the Coast Guard and that get there, if you've been assisting, at least you're dressed properly. So we want to make sure if we get a spine board here at Toronto Windsurfing Club, what we want to do is make sure that we have some of our staff that are on board have a higher level of swim background in order to use a spine board properly, and especially with a neck cuff. Because we know we had the issue with Jason here, right? Yep. And you know, if a spine board and somebody had been trained in that, we might have been able to get them out of the water faster. I used to be a national lifeguard, but I let that go as I got much older, and I should have stuck with my swimming, but I didn't. And so the big thing is that we need to have those things in place before we start looking at buying a spine board. That would be my recommendation anyway at this point in time. It took the club, I don't know how many years to get the defib, which when I was teaching first aid and CPR courses down here, it was one of the things I kept saying, you guys need to get a defibrillator. And then somebody came up with a brilliant idea, oh, if we get a defib, then you know we could be sued if we don't use it right. Well, I want to put all your fears away because there's a thing called the Good Samaritan Act. And so anytime you do any type of first aid, CPR, using a defibrillator, you are covered under that law. And the biggest thing under that law is common sense. Okay, now not everybody has that. We know, you know, people that go out there not dressed properly to windsurf, go too far offshore for their abilities. That's not common sense. But hopefully when it comes to a first aid situation that they might have the proper common sense. So one of the things we're going to do today is I'm just going to review what needs to be in your first aid kit, which I have already looked at. Both of them need to be refilled. And the other thing is we're going to talk a little bit about first aid as well. Just, not a big, because if you want first aid, we'll have to organize a course here hopefully next spring. And, because we can do, with more than one instructor, we can do up to a group this big, actually. You can do 3 instructors here. And so we could do that as well. But I just want to sort of touch on a couple of things when it comes to first aid. And one is the business of, if somebody steps on a nail or a piece of glass here on the beach, what do? Well, you don't yank it out. Okay, if it's a very small piece, no problem, but if it's big and it's well embedded, you want to make sure that you get it removed properly. All right, because when you pull something out of an area that is actually being held, the vessels are being held tight against it, you won't find a lot of blood. When you pull it out, it's going to bleed. All right, so that's one of the big things with taking impalements out. So you probably will end up going to a walk-in clinic, or maybe even Emerge. I don't recommend Emerge if you don't need it. Make sure when you're, as a windsurfer, check with your family physician if you have one. When was your last tetanus shot done? Okay, because they have to be done every 10 years. I just had mine done. Didn't even know I had to have it, but I happened to be in the doctor's office, like physically in a doctor's office. And she says, by the way, you're due for your tetanus shot. So now I'm up to date, so now I know that I'm not. But I don't go around trying to step on nails. So keep your eyes open as well when you're walking on shore for those kinds of things. But, stuff floats in the water, and sometimes it comes up on shore and it's got nails sticking out of it and stuff like that. But more common injuries in windsurfing are getting whacked in the head with the boom or the mast and splitting your head open, which we've also had here. So we want to make sure that we're prepared for those types of injuries. Now, when there's staff here, which Simon says at peak time, there's about 15 of them, they are all trained in first aid, so they should be able to help you for these minor things. When you have things like a head injury, you always have to be aware of other parts of the head injury, like is the person having difficulty knowing what's going on? Are they having blurred vision? Are they starting to feel sick or nauseous? Are they vomiting? These are all things that now require them to get to a hospital. That's a medical emergency. So when we were talking about calling 911, I always sort of look at 911 is it a life and death, or could it be a life and death situation? That's a 911 call, all right? If you don't know, or you think you should call 911, I'm having chest pains. I don't feel very good. I got a burning sensation coming up from here, and my chest hurts, and I'm having difficulty breathing. When I move, it hurts more. That's a 911 call. But I'm telling you, as the person who's suffering from it, no, don't call. Call. Please call. If they don't want to be transported, they can tell the ambulance guys and sign a waiver that says, I do not want to be transported. Okay, and then if they die, everybody's off the hook. But for you, morally, I'd rather make sure that somebody is only having maybe heartburn than find out that maybe they died later because they were having a heart attack. All right, so those are sort of some of the really light things that you need to kind of look at with first aid. So here on Toronto Windsurfing Club, of course, you can have things like sprained ankles, broken legs, broken arms. Mostly those things will happen if you really get whacked or something, or somebody runs into you, that type of thing. But just be, again, aware of the smooth surfaces in places. And, we are an aging population, so as we age, one of the things you want to do is just make sure that you're very aware of what's going on in your surroundings. So with first aid, I have a few things on the table that I'm going to show you that I think are really important. One is a pair of gloves, the other is a barrier device. So if you happen to be doing mouth-to-mouth on someone, if they're not my spouse, or they're not in my inner circle, my family, I'm probably not going to put my mouth on your mouth. All right? COVID, HIV, all those other nice, lovely things that we can get from people, or you can give them. So it's something that we don't want to do. And when it comes to CPR, you can just do compressions only. All right, a lot of people are like, well, how do you do that? Where are they going to get the oxygen from? There is always residual oxygen in the person's lungs,
that will last for about 10 minutes of pumping. So hopefully the good old-fashioned ambulance and police and fire are going to get there fast. Usually it'll be fire first because they're housed. Police, depending on how busy they are, and they have the same standard first aid as we do. And the other one, of course, is your ambulance drivers, and those guys, of course, are the top of the line before they get to the hospital. So it is important that we know when to call those numbers, all right? So if we have all the proper equipment, it works out really well. And here at the club, because we have a defibrillator, does everyone know where your defibrillator is? Okay, it's on the wall beside the change rooms. All right, it's in a box, it's not locked. All right, and it's there, so all you got to do is pick it up, and you also have to pick up the safety kit that goes with it beside it. And you take that out to the scene. And somebody asked me earlier about, well, what if it's raining or they're in the water? Well, you can't do a defib in the water. If it's raining out, it's better to get them to shelter. If you had them here on the ground, if you can splash that water with your hand, then you cannot use the defibrillator in that particular case. We also want the chest dry, so an umbrella over top of somebody in a situation like that, or in the wintertime, you can do it on snow, but not on water, all right? So those are some of the little things that you might need to concern yourselves with when it comes to using the defibrillator, especially around water, all right? The other thing about CPR, if you haven't taken a course, is you have to have the person on a firm surface. All right, so we don't do defib inside a car where it's nice and warm against a soft seat because we can't get the pressure. We prefer to have them on the ground on a firm surface. So when adrenaline's pumping, you're not going to worry about kneeling on this cement. All right, so that's one of the key things that people are like, can I just stand up and do my CPR? No, it's a lot more effective if you're kneeling on beside the person. Okay, so from there, I'm going to grab my stuff, and I'm going to get off the mic, and I'm going to try to speak as loudly as I can. All right, and if not, I'll get Jennifer maybe to grab the mic and just hold it in front of my face.
All right, so very important things to have are gloves. Okay, they're varying colors. There's blue ones, there's clear ones, there's pink ones. These ones here are probably old enough like they were when I had to use them at TWC the one time, and we took them out of the first aid kit, and my hand went right through them because they do rot if they're sitting around for too long. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you get the glove on nice and tight and smoothly. Okay, they come in varying sizes, so that was the other problem we had here. We had, I think, all small gloves, so some people with really big hands wouldn't be able to get them on their hand. So you want to get them all the way onto your hand, okay? So you've got this barrier first, especially if there's blood or body fluids. So I always say if it's wet and it's not yours, don't touch it, okay? So that's a good thing to go by. This is the little case that goes with your defibrillator, okay? And inside it is a pocket mask. I love that they call it a pocket mask. If I had that stuck in my pant pocket, it'd be a little bit bulky, so. But they are the best barrier. You have to push this out. Okay, so it comes out. If you keep this type of thing in your car, which I did, I used to keep one all the time in my car. It's great in the summertime, but not in the winter. It's very hard to push this thing back out, all right? So this is shaped like this. This part is where it goes over your nose. This part goes kind of in this part of the chin. This is the adult one, adult child. And this barrier device here has a one-way valve. So if they puke in here, it's not coming at you, okay? But air will move in and out. So that's your barrier device. It's the best one to have. So with my pocket mask, I always have a pair of gloves. Put it all ready. So I always know if I have my pocket mask with me, I'm going to have a pair of gloves. So that's one of the things. You can get these often when you buy your little first aid kit in the stores. Something that looks like this. One-way valve as well. Okay, this part can go in the mouth. This part goes up by the nose. You pinch the nose. With this, I don't have to worry about pinching if I have to pinch the nose even on somebody I know, and they got like, you know, snot coming out of it, that's wet. I'm not sure if I want to touch it. You know, maybe there's some other stuff in it too. So it can be pretty gross. I always call those the grossness of first aid. And so those are sort of, that's your safety equipment. So the other thing is about if you come across an emergency situation, you want to ask yourself, is it safe for me? Is it safe for my patient? Is it safe for everybody else around me? So if I'm going to do a water rescue and I'm not trained to do a water rescue, am I going to jump into the water when somebody's doing this and they're flapping their arms all over the place? Not a chance. I'm going to throw something to them. Okay, so again, those are all those water rescue things that you learn in swim courses. And I'm not recommending that every windsurfer goes out and takes a swimming lesson course, but there are adult lessons out there that teach you some of the basic stuff as well. So sometimes it can be a lot of fun to learn that stuff. And especially after listening to the swimmers that go back and forth over here, is knowing, you know, what you're capable of doing. And it's the same in a situation if there's a fire or anything like that that can harm you, or an area which is enclosed and there's a whole bunch of people down on the ground. I'm not going in there. There's probably some sort of a gas leak. All right, so you need to call 911 and get hazmat here. So with fires, the thing is, the question always is, and most people will do this, they'll assess the situation and see whether or not the person is close enough for them to get them in and get them out without injuring themselves. So if you're going to cause injury to you, then you're no good to your patient. So you need to make sure that you're safe first. So I always tell people, be a little bit selfish. Think about you first. Get your safety stuff on so that you know that you're ready to perform or do whatever it is that you need to do. All right? First aid kits. So I'll talk about those because I'll forget. Okay, there are 2 first aid kits here in these 2. Is there a third one somewhere?
Just the giant big one.
Where is it?
It's in the drawer.
Okay, we didn't find that one in the drawer. So you got a drawer over here that is down low and it has a big red cross on it. That's your first aid kit. So it's down by the back door. Oh, there it is. Okay, there is a bigger. So these are your portables. I didn't check that one.
That should be the one that's got the stock.
Okay, and there's a box of gloves in there, but there's none in the first aid kit. So someone should be responsible at the club for checking these at least twice a year. At the beginning of the season, probably at the end of the season. If you have a tendency to use more Band-Aids, like just regular Band-Aids and stuff, there should be extra stocks of those. So you want to make sure that these are checked at least twice a year. All right, so somebody, probably Simon, since he's the real big full-time person who's been here forever, he would be a good person to designate that. Stuff like this should not be in your first aid kit. WSIP would be up your behinds with this because you do employ people, and so if they decided to come in here and check to see what you have in your first aid kit, there's none in here, which is good because that's your main one. But even these things here, gloves here of varying sizes, and this is the other portable one, and it also has Tylenol in it, which again should be not in there. As a first aid person, we're not supposed to give anyone any type of medication. We can assist with it, but we can't say, oh, here, yeah, there's a bottle of Tylenol. Oh, you don't. So, yeah, you don't want to be doing that because maybe somebody, especially if it's aspirin, you might have allergies to it and stuff. So, they should, I always tell people, I have a medical kit that I keep with me, and I have a first aid kit. So my medical kit has things like Tylenol, it has aspirin, it has an EpiPen, it has whatever else I have to say. But it's my own personal stuff. And so these are sort of key things that aren't in your first aid kit, but they are in a medical kit. Right? And medicines really should only be given out by pharmacists and physicians, especially if they're prescribed. Every first aid kit should have a blunt pair of scissors, which I don't see in this kit. So you don't want to be taking this kit out and well, that's right. No. They are blunt. Okay, so this is the scissors that you guys have. I would highly recommend. There you go. I would highly recommend that they get a proper pair of blunt ones. They look like medical, surgical type scissors, and they kind of curve up a bit. They have a big round of those, and you can't poke anymore. But you can use these scissors to cut clothing off. And if you don't have the proper type of scissors, they won't cut anything. The really good ones will cut through a dime. You can actually cut, yeah, like this one here, it crosses over. So just, like I say, sort of a little thing that should, so in your defibrillator you have one. So this is a pair of scissors that
Oh, there you go.
there's a pair of defibrillator. That's the one for the yard.
I think they got taken out to pet row.
Right. Of course. These are useless if you cross them.
Yeah.
Which somebody used
Probably. They've got the pet row.
So your first aid kits should be used for that stuff. It's like safety pins at Home Depot, and they have their little patches. They use the safety pins all up out of their first aid kits for getting their little battery thing. So yeah, these are the proper ones. So they will, you start with this flat end, so it's against the skin. And you can cut it, and this will cut through wetsuits real easily. Okay, so and don't let anyone take you.
I will tell the kids to get it.
Yeah.
And whoever else is next.
So, like this one has lots of band-aids in it, but I would do an inventory of all three of your first aid kits, and then I'll give you the sheet from WSIB because it's online, and it depends on the number of employees that you have in your business as to what you really need in your first aid kit. But for me, you need band-aids, scissors, barrier device. You need your, you need some tape of some sort. Duct tape works pretty good for a lot of stuff. You know, if you injure yourself, if you've got some gauze pads, you put the gauze pad on, you use duct tape to cover it up. Then it's waterproof and you go back out sailing, right? Told you I'd had some injuries before. And, but yeah, you always want to make sure, and if you have your own personal first aid kit, one of the things that you do want to do is you want to make sure, like, if you're using it up yourself, put more back in there, because then when you have the next injury, you know, you're out windsurfing and the boom comes down, or you fall and you scrape this part of the bony part of your arm and it rips wide open, and you go to your first aid kit and you go, oh shoot, we used that the last time when I cut this one. You know, so we want to make sure we have that kind of stuff. Tensor bandages are a good thing to have in there, not just for sprains, but again, they're good to wrap and stop the flow of blood when you're bleeding really hard. Because it all now this has got tea in it. Safety pins are a good thing. They're great. Triangular bandages, of course, I call them. Okay. So here's the original ones. These are the ones that we see. So which one do you want me to put in? Or this one? Could actually be a nice one.
Sure. Use those are like a roll ball. That one's just for safe.
Oh, then I would make sure that we pull that. Yeah, so look at your first aid kits, if you're really interested in more information about, oh, I was going to talk about triangulars. So triangular bandages, when they're inside their packages, are also sterile. So they can also be used to stem the flow of blood if that's all you've got. The one thing about first aid, again, using that common sense, it doesn't have to look pretty unless you're taking, anyone in here teach for St. John's? No? If you go to a St. John's, your knots have to be perfect, everything has to look pretty. In the way we teach is, it doesn't matter what it looks as long as it's effective. Okay, because if I'm going to the hospital with something tied on me and you tied a granny knot, they're not going to undo it. They're just going to take a pair of scissors and they're going to cut it off. Okay, so don't worry about that. Is it effective? It doesn't work. And you use what you have. So if you have a nice first aid kit that's all laid out like this and has all this nice stuff, that's awesome. Because you can see it visibly and quickly to grab stuff and be able to, you know, use it right away. But if you have a smaller first aid kit, you know, like something like this or even smaller, I've got one that's like this big too, and it doesn't have much of anything in it, but it's better than nothing at all. Right? So what I would really recommend, if you don't have a first aid kit in your car, that you get one. Again, it's just one of those safety things, not just for you, but if one of your buddies gets hurt out there. You know, we used first aid kits with 3 cars when I ripped open my arm. And, you know, we bandaged it all up, put a waterproof bandage on it, and I went out to sail for another hour, and then went and got it stitched. You know, so, dumb thing. I'm the worst patient being a first aid person. We should have gone directly and got that fixed up, but we all know that we're not always smart. And I didn't use common sense, of course, because I don't have a lot of that sometimes. That's okay. Okay, any questions sort of on the quick blurb on first aid kits and stuff?
Yeah?
Yes.
I have one. Under the Good Samaritan Act, we're protected if we at least try.
Yes.
Why would that not apply to spinal boards, at least to try to get ahead of somebody without the training? I'm not talking removal, but I'm talking maybe floating.
I think the biggest thing is it depends on where we are offshore.
Yeah.
And knowing how to do it properly. I mean, because you're supposed to work within your training whenever you do anything. So if I haven't been trained at all, obviously I shouldn't be held accountable. I mean, my concern would be in the sense if they have done something up in his neck area, which is, and then he was moved incorrectly, he could have been paralyzed from here down. So for me, even as a water rescue person with my knowledge of water, I would be a little bit hesitant if they were telling me my neck really hurts. If I wasn't trained on putting the proper neck brace on first, so I wouldn't want to put a person on a spine board until I had a neck brace. And that's really quite a special. I can't remember the girl's name. What was it? I can't even remember what her name is. Like she was saying, they are trained in marine first aid, which is what we call advanced first aid. So it's one step above the standard first aid that you guys would get if I did a training course. And usually it's people who are dealing with really higher level medical problems that we do that with.
I guess the worry, among other things, is I prefer to
Yes.
leaving somebody in the water too long.
Well, that's the thing, and I mean, if they go unconscious and aren't breathing, then we're gonna lose them anyway. That's the big difference. So if they do go unconscious and aren't breathing, then you move them no matter what they're in or what state they were in. And if you even already know that they have a neck injury, you're just gonna try to protect their head, neck, and shoulder area as still as possible. But, yeah, I mean, sort of a toss-up, but that's a whole reasoning behind really recommending that at least maybe 2 of the full-time people maybe have their NLS and like take those swim courses over the winter, and you know, even if you ladies they need the time obviously to be able to do it, but I think it's important that someone is trained, or 2 people at least with these 2 different levels of kind of a day or a year. I mean, anyone who wants to go out and start taking swimming lessons and stuff and work your way up through that ladder. I mean, as an adult, we usually can do it a little bit faster than kids, that's for sure. It's your swimming capabilities and being able to swim in open water against waves or whatever you might need to do. I mean, here we're going to do this in progress in most instances, so it would be not only knowing how to use this board, but get under the person and get them on board. But, you know, because the spine board has, it's kind of like when they do the stuff on the ski hills, it's got two pads that you get the person on, and you've got the neck brace on, and then the two pads off, get them on the board, and just stick the Velcro so that their head won't move, so when you're lifting them, you're not turning it all. So that would still be my recommendation. Your defib is a little bit different type of machine than the one I have. This one here, which is the light pack, is similar to the ones that they have like at Toronto Airport. Over there is more square. But they all work on the same kind of premise. They have an on-off button. So this one has a green button that you have to push. So if you do bring this machine out, you want to make sure that you press it and turn it on. We've had instances where people were not trained in how to use a defib and they forgot to turn it on. You know, the machine's not working. Well, no, it doesn't work if you just open this lid on this one. You have to turn this button on. This one here, when you open it up,
call for help.
It starts
now.
talking to you right now.
Remove.
All right, and it talks you through the prompts, so we just be able to go through that. I'm not going to turn your live one on, but it's very similar. It's got an on-off button. You're going to be pulling this to get at the pads. And the best place to put the your defibrillator. So the first thing you do, whoever comes and gets the defibrillator would bring this with them. I would put this here.
Match it?
Yep. So that it's always with the machine. And it's got gloves in it. It's got a shaver in it. Why do we need a shaver? Well, if they're hairy, we need to shave their chest, just where the pads are going to go. I asked Simon if he wanted to be a demo, but he said no thanks. Come on, Simon. And you can't cut them because the way this thing works, it's got a little edge here, so you'll never slice them. And if you're working on somebody that you need to put a defibrillator on, they're dead anyway, so they're not going to hurt or feel anything if you do hurt them. This is your barrier mask. I would actually stick a pair of gloves with it. Okay. And I would stick like maybe a couple different sizes in depending on the sizes you have. I would want, you know, the gloves in there too, so that if you send somebody for the defibrillator and they don't bring the first aid kit, then you've got gloves with the machine. So a bit of a safety issue. How many people have ever taken a CPR course? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, 7 people. When was the last time you took one? Decades. Yeah, if it's been a while, the stuff has changed. I know your Red Cross Facebook there is outdated. There are new protocols that were in all first aid and books, manuals, and stuff was updated in 2020. So we have very specific things that we have to, guidelines that we have to follow when it comes to So with defibrillation, when would we want to put this machine on somebody? Anybody know?
Absolutely. No breathing, no pulse.
Right. How do we know as a lay person that this person doesn't have a pulse? What does he look like? Yeah, he's a little blue.
Stop
in case my guy has a windsurfing shirt on. Yeah, so the color is a good giveaway. We used to check pulse. That's gone. And the reason why we took that away, well, because a lot of times we can't find it. So that's the biggest thing. You're all freaking out anyway because this person's looking like this. So to try to find a pulse, and we're doing this kind of thing with a hand and a thumb, and so now we're getting our own pulse. Oh, he's alive! Well, he's not. He's dead. So we took the pulse out for any lay persons, which is us. Healthcare professionals don't have to do it. All right. So how else can I tell? I can tell by if I touch the person, what do they feel like? Cold. Okay, cold to the touch. All right, they're going to be blue, gray. Doesn't matter what color your skin is. We live in a multicultural society. Their skin is going to kind of go a grayish color. People are really dark skinned. Sometimes you have to just push down on the inside of the lip to see what's going on in there. Another reason for having gloves. I don't want to stick my hands inside of the gloves, but I don't know. So that's one of the things. The other thing is you can look across the chest and see whether there's any movement. If I didn't have this big jacket on, I could lay on the ground, like in the summertime. If I was lying on the ground, you'd be able to see chest expansion, even if it's shallow. Okay? So if you don't think that they're breathing, they look like they're dead, they probably are. Alright? And those are the instances that you need to help them. First of all, we have the parties now. So you come down and you find some guy passed out on the ground. He's looking not too good because he OD'd or almost OD'd or something. So you still want to put your gloves on. Or you just want to call 911 because you can visibly see that he's not in a good way. All right. If I feel comfortable, and I have my gloves on, I might come up and go, hey, 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 wake up, wake up. And if I don't get any response, okay, we know it's a true medical emergency. But when do we phone 911? We phone 911 after we recognize that the person isn't breathing and looks like they don't have a pulse because they're blue, all right? And you check that responsiveness, and you call 911, all right? Because the sooner you can get 911 here, the better. If it's a cardiac issue, in other words, the heart is stopped, and it's in that fibrillated, what they call a fibrillated situation where the heart's just doing this literally inside this is your heart, it's doing this inside your chest. So it's not pumping oxygenated blood. So you need to get help here as quickly as possible. This gives you a lot better chance of survival if you have a defibrillator on site. And that's why I'm so glad the TWC finally invested in one of these and in the training so that people would understand how to use it. So part of my purpose here today is to make sure that people would understand how easy it is to use these machines. And they all work on the same premise. So this one here, which is here here, works exactly the same as my trainer does. All right. So when you come across a person like this, and I'm working at TWC, and I see somebody like this, and I'm going to say, hey, you go get the defibrillator and the first aid kit. So he should know where that first aid kit is, if he's a member here. All right, so that's one of the key things, is know where your first aid kits are and know where your defibrillator is, so that you can actually get it. And if there's somebody else here, can you go call 911? So now you've got 911 call, you've got the defib coming, you've got the first aid coming, and then I can continue to work with the patient. All right, and some of those things would be, is after I've done this and checked this, I'm going to start compressions. So how do I know how to do compressions? Well, there's two ways. You can lift up the shirt, because you're going to have to remove this anyway. And you look into the center of the chest, right along that sternum. You take your left hand, everybody do this. Take your left hand, place it in the center of your chest. Okay, ladies, you've got boobs in the way, but just get the hands right in there. So the heel of the hand is right on the sternum. And then you would place the second hand on top lock your fingers so you're using the heel of the hand, not the whole hand. Because people have a tendency to do this and just sort of slap their hand on here. It's heel of the hand in the center of the chest. And then you're going to push down. Okay, and it's firm. Okay, you need to get down 2 inches on an adult chest and almost 2 inches on a child. So it's quite deep, and then the compression rate is going to be between 100 beats and 120 beats per minute. So for those of you, most of you here would know this song. Another One Bites the Dust. Oh, wait a minute, that's not the one I want you to remember. I want you to remember Staying Alive. Staying alive, staying alive. So if you think of those songs, my daughter always thinks of Another One Bites the Dust, but so if you think of those 2 particular songs run between 100 and 120 beats per minute. Okay, so if you can think of that noise in your head, you can do it. I've had taught classes where the whole class is singing it, not Another One Bites the Dust. So you're doing your beats. Okay, you're waiting for the defibrillator. You're like, where the heck's the defibrillator? Okay, so somebody brings your defibrillator. If they're trained or are not trained in first aid, it doesn't really matter, because they can start the whole thing with a portion of it. It's better if they do know it. If they do know first aid or CPR, identify yourself to come and help, because it's always nice to have a second person here helping you out. If you've got more than one barrier device and you have lots of gloves, then people can help and actually do breathing and switch off and on. Because once you hook this up, it goes for 2 minutes before it will actually stand back again to analyze. And during that time, if Yo, get your body over here. I need your body.
You're gonna get zapped.
Okay, so you're no first aid, so it would be like you were gonna come in and help. So we were just talking about that. So if Simon's here and he's brought the defibrillator and he's gonna come and help me, he would stand on the opposite side of this mannequin or this our patient. Okay? And so he would start the whole process with our defibrillator. But if we didn't have the defibrillator, I would pump like this, and he comes up and says, I know CPR, yeah, and I take over, or I know CPR, I can help, and I'll say, stand by, 9, that's 30, take over, breath, okay.
I thought he was going to push them up.
So I was somebody I knew, obviously. So he would take over on that when he hits 30.
I'll just count it. I'll
Breath,
stop there.
breath. Okay? So I'm watching him, and this is hard because this is more real. The compression.
The body's really high.
Yeah, it is. So so his comment was it was really hard to get the depth because we're up so high. If we were on the ground, so if we were on the ground, and he's on this side and I'm on that side, so we would both be kneeling, and he's on the chest. Okay, so as the second person in, I can say to him whether his compressions, I can say good compression, good rate, good depth, you need to go a little deeper, okay, that type of thing. If I'm the other person in, at this point, I want to be holding his head in a tilted position. And the reason I want that is because it keeps the airway open, all right? If I don't have a barrier device and we're doing CPR and I keep that open, air is still going to go in. The diaphragm is going down and it's coming back up with each chest recoil. So what we want to do is create like that pressure inside the lungs, which will automatically seem like the guy's breathing, but he's not. All right? when you're doing chest compressions, the person's gonna look better. So don't say, oh, look at the colors all coming back, they must be okay. No, they are not. And if I don't have a defib machine, we just want to keep this going until the ambulance gets here. And when the ambulance gets here, don't stop and go, yay, they're here.
High five.
Because they have equipment that they need to get out of the stuff. And as long as everything is looking really effective, quite often.
Call for help now.
Help, help, help. Okay,
Remove all
hopefully I've already
clothing
done
from
that.
patient's chest.
So we've done that.
Pull red handle to open bag. Look at pictures on pads. Peel one pad off blue plastic. Apply pad to bare skin, exactly as shown in the picture. Press pad firmly. Peel other pad off blue plastic. Apply pad to bare skin, exactly as shown in the picture. Press pad firmly. Remove all clothing from patient's chest.
I forgot I needed this in. Oh no.
Don't zap me.
It worked earlier.
Pull red handle to open bag. Do not touch patient. Evaluating heart rhythm.
It would automatically do that once you have these things on. So
Stand by.
it's evaluating.
Preparing to shock.
Everybody stand
Everyone
by.
clear.
Everyone
Press
clear.
flashing button.
Clear. Everyone clear.
Shock delivered. Provide chest compressions and rescue breath. Continue care. Continue care.
Okay, you just keep doing that. The machine is going to keep talking to you. I'll leave the machine on for a minute. Because it'll keep going, and every 15 seconds it says,
Continue care.
So the reason it's saying continue care is that after shock was delivered, when shock is given, it actually flatlines the person, and then the hope is with the initial pumping on the chest is that
Continue care.
it'll give it that little kickstart, go back into a regular sinus rhythm. All right, so if it goes into a normal sinus rhythm, sinus rhythm, the person will obviously the color will get better. They'll open up their eyes, they'll wake up, they'll want to know what happened because they won't remember what happened. It's almost like getting knocked on the head when you have a cardiac arrest. So the key is to care for the patient, which could mean putting a blanket over them, making them comfortable. But please leave the pads on them until the ambulance arrives. One of the things about these pads, and this is a live
Continue
set,
care.
is this particular machine, which is usually pretty adaptable to the paramedics. They'll just pull this plug out and they'll use these on the...
Do not
so
touch
at that point
patient.
you would step back.
Evaluating heart rhythm. Stand by. Preparing to shock.
So if it's preparing for shock, what does it
Everyone
mean?
clear. Press
Yeah, you
flashing
haven't
button.
revived this person.
Shock delivered. Provide chest compressions and rescue breath.
Pretty straightforward. Okay,
So the machine is checking if
yes,
if
during that time when our hands are off it, the machine is checking for the heart, see what the heart is doing. Is it still in a fibrillated state? Is it gone flatline? If it goes flat,
Continue care.
if it goes flatline, if it
Call for help now.
help, If it goes flatline, it's just going to ask you to continue to do CPR. It still will stop every 2 minutes. It gives you that time to do the switch over when you're doing two-person CPR. But the key is to use the machine. Don't be afraid to use it because it does give you all the information. What it doesn't tell you are those things I talked about. The hairy chest that you have to shake, being on a dry surface, or one that you can't splash the water. So if I put a towel down and it soaks up the water, I can't splash the water anymore. That's fine too. The chances are if you're going to move them to put a towel underneath them, you're probably going to just lift them up and put them inside, somewhere where it's drier. But you can see how easy CPR is. I did a healthcare professional one the other day, and there was a 6-year-old girl in the class. It was the daughter. She didn't have a babysitter. I said, yeah, bring her in. She did all of the things that you needed to do. She was head tilt, putting the mask on, doing the breaths. Her mom was pumping on the chest, and she said, Mom, can I do it? And she got on the chest, and so I went over and I said to her, you need to push a little bit harder. And so then she got into the rhythm, and at 6 years of age, she was able to compress the chest 2 inches, up to 30 beats. She was pretty tired after the 30 beats, but she was having fun doing it and had no fear. So it's something that, you know, we really do need to train our children how to do as well, because it's maybe us that's going to go down. It's going to need this and know when to call. You know, mommy collapses and I'm all blue, call 911, show them how to do it. And then this is the next stuff that they need to do. So CPR is simple, it's easy to do, anybody can do it, unless you have no arms, all right? If you have prosthetics, you could still do it. So the key is that it's something that you can do. Do it until the person either revives or until you physically can't do it anymore. And that's the only reason that you can leave a patient and you will still not leave them. So any type of first aid that you perform, you never get up and say, okay, you're okay, bye. You know, the guy's alive, but you can't leave him. Once you start, you must stay with him until the next level of help gets there. All right, for minor first aid, not a big deal, but for regular CPR and first aid, that it requires the next step, and that is going to be important. All right. Any questions, concerns, fears? Would anyone here be afraid? Go ahead.
How much the defibrillator?
Okay, well it depends on what you get. This was what, about 1,700? Yeah. So that was just without the outside things. The outside little pocket thing with all the stuff in it was an additional price. This one here, the life pack, a live one, which I have at home, cost me about $2,300. And that included the extra stuff as well. All right, but to me it's worth it. It's worth it to have it in our neighborhood because we have a lot of elderly people. And I ran into an issue where I thought I was having a heart attack. I went to the hospital, turned out to be something else, but I'm still here today to talk about it. And it was after that that I started thinking, why don't I have a live defibrillator at my home in case something really happens? You know, when you start getting up in age, things start to fall apart. So the difference between using this, because people interchange, oh, he died of a heart attack. Heart attacks are not, you don't die from a heart attack. You die from a cardiac arrest. So the difference is cardiac arrest is when your heart stops. Heart attack is when there's a blockage and I'm going, oh, it was chest pain, it hurts like heck, or oh, my stomach's burning, I don't feel very good, or oh, I got pain between my shoulder blades, or I got stuff running down my arms, like I feel this pain running down my arms or up into my jaw. And it doesn't just mean, oh, I got a jaw ache, so what do I do the first time? I'm going to go to my dentist, right? Because I think I got maybe something wrong with my teeth. And often the heart is in the center of the chest, so it could really be one side or the other. So the key is that often what will happen is that, you know, that pain, depending on where that blockage is in the heart, will depend on how strong it is and where exactly, because it sits on that angle. It's about the size of your fist, so it sits like this inside the chest. So if that blockage is way down here, you're probably going to feel that indigestion, and it just won't go away. So again, those are things that you go, oh well, I'll go take a couple of Tums and see how I feel. Well, okay, fine. But then you go and you lie down, and it progresses in some cases where that little blockage doesn't sort of pop through and go off somewhere else, and now you've got another chunk of something floating around in your body, which could end up here. So the concern is that we want to treat, this is treatable. Okay, if I'm having a heart attack, it's treatable. But I still need to get to hospital. And I highly recommend, if you're having any of those types of signs or symptoms, that you definitely call 911. Because if you drive yourself to the hospital, like my husband and I did, we drove to the hospital. It was 45 minutes before I saw a doctor, even though my blood pressure was up here and my heart rate was up here. Like, I'm an athlete, it shouldn't be like that. And so that kind of scared me about, and when I was in the hospital, the doctor said, if you ever have these signs and symptoms again, you should know better, being a first aid instructor or CPR instructor, call 911, because you'll get triaged in quickly. Okay, so with any heart issues. So it's better to have them sent home with, oh, it was just indigestion, than to have something happen worse later where it blocks enough that you have massive damage to the heart and then the heart stops. Okay? Any questions? Yeah. Yes.
Rather than just having all these years, for people that are trained in first aid and medical, the club should actually get those O2 sensors as well as telling your blood pressure, your heart rate as well, or actually get something like a cuff.
No, when you start doing stuff like that, then it's advanced.
Okay.
So that would mean that if there's a nurse, like is here, with somebody that's an actual medical professional, then it might be beneficial. But I would say the most important thing is having the defibrillator and being trained on how to use it and feel really comfortable. Because it's one thing to watch Simon and I doing this. It's another thing for me to say, okay, you come up, you're next. Or I don't do a really good demonstration sometimes in my classes. I'll just talk about it, and then I'll say, okay, let's get on the mannequins, and then I just walk over and hand it to one of the group. And it's like, now they're in the spotlight, because now the rest of the class is like this, okay, so crowd control is important. And people are going, oh, that's not the way you were trained, or that's not the way you're supposed to do it. You know what? You don't need those people in your face. So that's where crowd control comes in. Is to get rid of those people, and for me, any type of crowd control is people being gathered around and trying to give them privacy. The crowd control should be like this: everybody turn around, out, away from the thing, and move back. And then that way, there's none of them like kind of doing this kind of thing all the time. Because you only want people that can help you near you. So that's one of the things. I think I saw another thing somewhere.
Get a group together and you can instruct us here.
Yeah, we were actually, Jennifer and I were actually talking about that, because for years I used to come down here every spring and teach a course. We did standard first aid. It's a 2-day course with the default. Well, it's all standard first aid courses, and all first aid courses actually now come with a demonstration of defib. I always make people participate on it. So people all get the chance, in a group, like 2-person, everyone gets to do the mannequin thing with the pads on and everything else, because that's important. So we can certainly talk about that. I mean, there's definitely a cost involved in that. But in numbers also, if we had a group as big as this, I would probably go through ADET, the other company I work with. Because they would supply all the materials and books and stuff like that. Whereas if I do it, I would need to find another life-saving instructor to work with. I can work up to 10 people in a group. And like I say, we have done it here in the spring. Now I don't come back until June 12th, because we're trying to coordinate everybody who wants a first aid or CPR post. In the meantime, I do have some of my business cards here, so if you wanted to do something even over the winter and get a few people together, I think I'm going to be around a little bit more this winter. My daughter and her husband don't want me there for 2 months like last year, out west skiing. So I'll probably be around, so if people wanted to get together, you know, even 4 or 5
Don't
people.
add my name on that.
You know, and I can either come to your house or I can, you guys can come up north. You know, north, which is just on the other side of, near Keswick. Those people who go up to Keswick, you don't know how far that is. And we can do it over the winter months as well. But I do think it's really key if we have it, we can do CPR more easily. Or we could just do a CPR. Any other questions?
Just a couple of points.
Defibrillator when it's on radio should not be used EHF.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Pregnant, no concern.
What is it?
Pregnant patient, no
Oh,
concern.
no concern.
Keep, small keep, this big pots, maybe too big. One up, one down.
Well, one in the center?
And the other one on the
other
back.
one on the back.
Make sure they don't touch one another. It will be a problem.
You would go here between the shoulder blades.
Metal surface with the bottom has been set. Wet. No splash has been set. Snow. Ice, it's okay. Rain, it's okay. If rain here, practical thing. You may want to bring inside, but if you see the head is awkward position, like that, leave it as is. Cut that wetsuit off. Just cut bare chest. You see a jewelry and massive chain across. Cut it if you can. Move an inch.
Why you need the big scissors.
This scissors was just twisted. Cut the paint. So they'll cut. What else? Anybody seen that pacemaker?
This is what you would get in real training.
You know what pacemaker is, right? Heart simulator. You know how it looks like? A pump, inch or 2 inch in diameter under the skin.
It's usually on the left-hand side.
You'll see it. Move that thing. Move the pot inch, either direction.
What about piercing?
Piercing. Move around it. If you can remove it, remove it. Cut it. Massive chain across, as I said, between two nipples. Cut it away. That's all right.
It don't take time to actually cut that stuff up. There's time is the issue.
And last one, crowd control. As you said, people around with their phones and body cameras, please ask them to turn it off. Go away.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. That was incredible. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Thank you, Peter, for coming early to help set up. That was sweet. And Carrie, Simon, Jerry, Betty, thank you. Thank you for making the time today to do this. This is our first one, and we hope to do many more.
Thank you.
If you come. Thank you.